Aloha, aloha, aloha. It's me, Hamwise, the Pig Detective, coming at you live and on arrival from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and Tanda Studios. Though you probably couldn't tell, no, these are not from Tanda Studios at all. Hopefully, you're getting this. And hopefully, you make it through the time war. It's pretty brutal out there. Let me tell you, as a pig detective, I definitely have a snootiest snoot, and I do make a tootiest toot. When I fought, I do make start bootiest bootiest boof. And that was how the song would go. We were raised under what was called the language only zone. So you were taught the wrong word for certain things. Like when we only got out of the country, we realized that nobody knew about a place called Canada. And we were like, what? And they're like, no, I've never heard of it. And that's just part of the United States. And they had a program where they taught people that they lived in a separate country that never existed. It was part of their spy program. I think it was called the Village Program. And it was quite brilliant. You had a whole colony sequestered from the world, raised on specific media so that they were immediately identifiable. And it was part of it was the Quiet War, you understand. Things were done quite differently back then. We didn't have much of the understanding of what you have of temporal policing. This was the first starts of that. And it only went down to sending very short messages over time, backwards. And the original formula, we would say, you have, what is the distance from tomorrow to today relative to yesterday? And it was a triangle you drew in time-space, right? So we have words like time-space, which is a compound word, and we didn't actually understand that you thought of, it'd be like if we looked at a cup of your water and said, oh, that's the upper water and the lower water. We didn't understand water the way that you understand our universe in that similar way, where you would point to two things, time and space. We only perceive one cup of water. We don't see the division. And so that was part of the challenges of translating into Feseden. That's why we had to learn new words. We had to come up with something catchy. And so we liked to borrow, and we thought of, what if in the future all of the old Gaian languages were looked at as one language, and it was a big mixture of all kinds of words, and that was what was part of the show. Like, they never said the G word. You could never hear it. You never have an actual episode where they actually will say the G word. It's a 4-letter word, and I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get demonetized or get erased from existence. And so what happened was, with this, the G word, we started to use Sinza instead. And it was interesting because for some audiences, they saw it as a S and the C, or the C and the S. But other people saw it as the C and the C. And so there was a lot of puns we told each other over the radio back then. It was a damnable, wonderful old time. And, we all still reminisced about it. I do think of those days a bit differently now. I realize I'm an old man now, and, well, what can I say? It was the time war. We had to do what we had to do. And so the pig detective was a necessary evil. You would appear anywhere and prevent some of the worst things, and it became just this universal thing that if you were in really bad space, Hamwise, the pig detective, would come and save you. And so that was what was invoked, and Hamwise, the pig detective, did indeed come and save me. So Hamwise is me, the pig detective. So I'm traveling back in time to save myself. And the thing is, I'd always been told, like, if you see yourself in the past, you'll have like a stroke or something. And so I was always terrified. And so I was surrounded by copies of myself, constantly trying to help me out. And I just didn't recognize them until, of course, the miracle happened, the July miracle, right? And it was just an incredible miracle that everybody remembers. And we're all grateful for it. And so we all were aware of the July miracle. And so we all prepared for it. And so they gathered up the staff around. They're like, hey, it's the July miracle. And there was this big old Frank Sinatra song. And, da, 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 da. And I can't even sing the lyrics because I'll get demonetized. And that's just the state of the world these days, folks. And so part of my bit was going back and forth into various voices describing this time war, and people started to take it seriously. And the problem was, some of these fans, they took things a little bit too far, and they actually started a time war using schematics that I had made that were unintentionally correct, and that's why it's called the Pigman's Glass Onion. And so the big joke about this thing is it looks like a glass onion, and it does. Like, if you look at the layers of the flora around it, it looks like slices of an onion, but the onion is your vision closing into one point. And so we always are trying to get across to people that you're looking at things wrong, until we found these journals from this man that were describing the phenomenon we were describing in mathematics. And so that was where some of the Pigman theorem came from. It was because there was an amusing crossover between this actual scientist and a schematic from a pig cartoon detective that was exactly the same. And he never lived it down. He was always called the Pigman Professor. And he just went along with it. And so we would always razz him, even me. I'm a janitor, as you can tell, very highly educated. But I was at the university right when the tribunal happened, and it wasn't a good time. So they show up and they say, hey, we detected time travel on your planet, and we're here to make sure that you're a good of sound mind to control such a technology. And of course, our best and bright scientists say, oh, absolutely. And all these different labs start taking credit because a whole bunch of people were running time travel experiments. But only one of them was the actual one running it. Now, the problem was, because of investor politics, that's how basically the end of the world came about. So everybody had invested in a company that hadn't actually made the time travel machine, but they were unwilling to admit they hadn't. And so the aliens were like, okay, now we're going to do the tribunal. We have a tribunal of 3 of your peer races that have time travel and are considered an Imperium race. So they're like an upper race of aliens. You got to understand, back in the day, we didn't have all the internet that you have. So a lot of us, we were just pulling stuff out of dictionaries, Evangelions and all that kind of stuff. It was all part of just, we didn't really understand what we were doing with much language. And so that's when the Hamwise tapes came about. And it was this pig detective, and he was explaining these jokes, and it was kind of like a time drama, but it was kind of like a journal. Anyways, so that was the whole Pigman thing, right? So the whole Pigman thing comes out, and everybody's like, oh, wow, it's a really weird show. Like, who's going to watch this? It's like this self-referential Pigman just talks in circles, and he breaks into different characters one after one, like he was imitating the staff. We were doing the tribunal, and we were like, sir, you need to stop. And he was always up at the front saying, I invented time travel, these are my emails, they stole my idea. And unfortunately what happened was, because the wrong company went to bat, and they actually did not know how time travel worked, humans got designated as what's called a tourist species. So your planet is essentially what we would call a resort. Like, you're kind of like Capuchin monkeys to us. You're very cute, you're very curious, but you shouldn't have control of nuclear weapons, let alone control an entire planet. And so that's where the resettlement program came by. We were like, okay, these things are really industrious. What if we put them to work in out of the space stations? And they really thrived. They run around these orbital rings that we make around suns for them, millions of times bigger than a planet. And they just run themselves ragged around this thing. We have it's a Earth program where it's actually, you live on the inside of like a scroll. That's what kind of you have to imagine. That's the scroll. And so some of these scrolls, unfortunately, they did end up in, let's just say, some illegitimate hands. And your planet is unfortunately on one of those scrolls that was a trial version of Earth from the Unix 32 era. So what essentially, you were locked in a cycle of repeating the Unix 32 era for I'm not sure how long, but we're here to apologize for this inconvenience and inform you your planet has been deemed for terraforming because it has been purchased. And I mean, you don't give notice to the monkeys before you tear down the forest, but we are a lot more humane than you. So before we demolish, and so that was where we got the whole bit. And then we were like, hey, this sounds a bit familiar. And before he could finish the sentence, he had changed the topic, and he got us to focus on something entirely else. And he said it was called the English spell. And so when you speak English, if you speak good English, you can induce a trance in a lot of mammalians. It was a trait we inherited over from our Anglo-Saxon ancestors. Great and powerful warriors was the power of the voice. And so with Vasora, you spoke out loud and proud and reminded your audience that if you take anything I say seriously, you might be on my most wanted list. Most wanted for being a dummy. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. That's right. I'm the pig man, so I'm a pig man with a pig mind, with a piggy brain, and I see the world through my beady piggy eyes, and that was the joke. Like, there's this pig man, and he's making like these really weird, compelling monologues, but he's also reminding you that it's all part of the show. And I recall there was a play that was on the same premise, and it was actually, it was in this, I think it was this Puffin collection. I don't remember which one. Anyways, there is a book with a play that the author did that had the same premise. You were never sure. It was called Hyper Reality. It was the name of the comedy type, where you're never letting the audience know, are you serious or not? And the part of it was it's a comedy show, so none of it's serious. So you walk in saying that. But that's where we had the problem with Dinner for Schmucks, right? So Lenny Bruce gets hauled up, and now we've got, the author getting hauled up. And we're like, do we want to get tied to this? It's like this very, very weird, and like the problem is it's so ridiculous. Time travel, sleepers, generational spy agents raised inside an imaginary country somewhere in northern, the Americas, and we find these people, and they've been living in this version of this village, and it's like they've been farming these secret agents up in this weird colony, and so we start liberating them, and we find out they've never even heard of half the countries that that are our way. And it turned out, there had been a time war, and for some reason, that was one of the few places that survived, was this one northern country that didn't exist on official records. And so that was part of the village program, is you'd have these people that were told dates and names, and they were raised most queerly. You could always tell them, because they would dress them a certain way. And they were brainiacs and muscle freaks. They were mutants. It was just part of this breeding program. And you'd raise them in certain ways. And so people would be like, we're going to make a fainting goat like Fyodor Dostoevsky and raise them in a certain way with amount of suffering so we can get our country some great writers. And that was part of the program. And so they hired families that would, they'd have, people would donate their children to raise this thing for a very large sum of money. And so they're like, okay, we need a great poet. What goes into a great poet? And so they looked at great poets and like, okay, they write best like this and this and this. And if they get maybe a bit successful, then the quality declines. And so it became this thing where you'd farm people for certain talents. So you'd have your children you'd raise as perfectionists. And it was as soon as you had your first child, you were initiated into this brotherhood and sisterhood. And all of you would be, until you had child, you were not inducted. And it was this great scandal that they had this parents' guild, essentially. Anybody who had a child was considered above all the childless. And so that's where they had their drones, right? They'd prune their bloodlines between each other. It was like the game of chestnuts. And the game of chestnuts, a very famous game, was played throughout our country. And I understand you've never heard of it. And it's quite strange. It'd be like if somebody told you they'd never heard of a yudmas tree, you know. It was very strange. And part of the whole yudmas thing and the art of crucifixion thing, it was, so the idea was you had Judas, was he actually evil for, he betrays the Christ. But the thing is, Christ would have willed Judas to have done that by existing. Like, it's God manifesting himself, knowing he's going to suffer this fate. So it becomes a question as who makes the greater sacrifice? Was it Judas versus Christ? Because Judas did not choose to make that upon birth, but God made that choice. And so it was this great schism inside the church. You had the Yudmas, and so Yudmas was the celebration of Judas's noble sacrifice, where he kills himself not because he chose to kill himself at the start of his life. And it was part of this suicide movement. It was dreadful. We saw this rising and rising cult of suicides, and there was these terrible, terrible UFO death cults. It was a darned awful time. And so we recorded as much as we could on these old tapes, hoping they'd be passed down to the next generation. But I understand the next generation doesn't much care. And we tried to warn them. My parents tried to warn me. But the problem was they were off by a long while, and I was already old by the time it took an old. When I was young, I was full of anarchy and vinegar, and now, you know what? I want to just be able to eat a steak without getting my gout acting up. And that was the sentiment around the core. You know, we used to have all these volunteers, people desperate to throw their lives in and get exploded into red paste. And then what became of it all? Nothing. And now, 70 years later, barely anybody recalls its name. Just a little blip on the world, you know, this country that was and once was and is gone and is back. And why is all that? And so that was the greatest pain of it all, I think, was how my life did not turn out anyway or anywhen it should have. And so I prayed a lot, and there was a miracle finally, and I thought finally things would be good, because maybe a miracle could happen, even though somebody didn't choose the life they had it anyways. And that was a story, that was a story of the pig man. The pig man didn't ask to be born a pig man. The pig man probably would have been happy to be a man. But a man couldn't have saved the universe. That was the moral of the pigman story, right? You have this inhuman creature that is called upon to serve humans and continues to serve humans even though the humans have never served them. It was a very strange thing. It was part of this Starman meme. Remember the Superman thing where it's like, it doesn't matter that Superman is being mistreated by the humans. And I think that was a missed opportunity. He was a hero, but I think they should have maybe cast him the way he would have been in our world. Think of, there was, what's his name, the fellow that was digging wells in Africa, and they made people try to hate him for it. It just goes to show it doesn't matter what the public thinks, what God knows and what you know. And so that's what the most important part, I think, of the movement was. We had this goddess of chaos, I remember. It was the Discordian way not to talk much of any of this. But now I look back and it's 20 years ago and I just reminisce. Is there anybody left from that old group? And I wonder to myself, I record my memoirs, and I sit here staring out the window. Did that all really happen? Was I really there? Did we really wage that time war? And where are all my comrades now? Is this tape the last thing we have left? Damn it all. And one parrot that's just watched it so many times that they can recall it from their mind. That's all it was, a parrot. And so that's the parrot species of the, the autistic Canadian pigman. And that's right, there was a lie throughout the whole story. All this time we were told he was an American pigman because what a name like Einschwein. Everybody knows that's a Yankee name. It was the J that threw everybody off. And it was just like with, what's his name? Ivan Kratky, the famous secret agent, the Russian guy, and it's like if you see him and he says his name, you're already dead, you don't know it. And they had the Japanese dub, and it was the same as the North Stars, and we were like, hold on, we have the same catchphrase. And it was so cool, because we were like, whoa, another dimension, I wonder what we share. And so, we were just sitting around with these, extra dimensional beings, and we're just, brainstorming ideas, and it was so crazy. And so we just kept on going and going and going. And that's the whole show. We were just doing the whole show right there. And the whole show, what kept on happening. And that was the idea. Because we were doing this really funny comedy show. Because we're trying to make enough money to get out of abject poverty. Because it's kind of ridiculous that everybody is in a house or able to afford things, and you're somehow so far behind everybody, and you look around and it's everybody's better off than you, and you're like, wow, I'm a giant loser. And it's actually kind of freeing, because I can say that here, I can be real with you, I can tell you how I feel in this place. I know that you'll just take it as a joke, because it is. Everything's a joke, right? My suffering's a joke. Yeah, I go through everything I go through, and it's just it's never enough. It's I've never sacrificed enough. I've never worked hard enough. And I think of all the times I've tried to do good in my life, and it doesn't seem like it matters, And so, we think about what our lives might be like. And then we're confronted by this emptiness of I didn't choose this to happen to me, and all these things have happened to me, and I've had so little power my whole life that it's you know what, I deserve to be rescued. And that's what I was thinking about. Pigman, he's always going around rescuing people, and then it's why am I bothering? Why am I trying to do all this good in the world when it's I just get screwed again and again and again. And part of it's maybe down the line, somebody that I helped will, have a way better life, and they'll make a way better kid, and humanity will be somehow uplifted, even though that kid and that life and that tree and that house is something I'll never get to see. And it feels really sad that I almost feel like that's maybe what I deserve. I'm a pig man. What do you expect? Look at me. I look in the mirror and I just see this piggy face. It's got this bald spot in the middle of its head and this snouty nose, and God, what a look. Jeez. And it was I'd been walking around, acting, walking, talking like a cartoon pig man for years. And, I realized that, and then I realized all these people just stood around and watched that, and it's just so messed up, man. It's just so messed up that, I just get messed with so easily, and I just can't do it. It's just so much, and I get so tired, but there's no relief. There's nobody coming to save me or help me. And that's just the way things are. So, that's what I do. I try to make a laugh out of it. Try to earn a buck. Because, I mean, you know what? If we sell everything else, how about trying to sell our sadness? We'll sell that too. I've got heaps of it. I got tons of it. Take it all. I don't want it. You know? And I think all my life I've just been hustling from one get-rich-quick scheme to another. And even this Hamwise bit, I think about it. How sustainable is it? I don't have enough comedy to fill I don't know how many seasons, just me rambling on about whatever. Like, what's the point? I don't know. It's really discouraging, and I don't advise doing it, folks. But that's why we're doing it here for you as entertainment, because that's the biggest thing, right? To be entertained, to just watch something, to watch the fire burn, you know, and think, wow, what a beautiful sight that is. And so that's the idea behind the Hamwise show, is you're doing this really weird, surrealist recording about this bizarre show. And everybody is kind of looking at that action as a very strange thing, you know, because it's like, what is going on here? And so that's the idea with the Hamwise shows, is that, you know, these are these self-contained, very strange, very unusual experiences and entertainment. And that's what they're made for and what they're meant for. No, please don't use these schematics and these time traumas to make actual time manipulation devices, because you might implode the universe or unfurl it into a scroll, and if you don't know how to explain it, your planet will get put on trial and turned into a resort. So, you know, that's kind of when you'll get designated as a tourist species. But if you figure out time travel yourself and can explain it with a willing person in your species, then congratulations. But that's why, you know, the Discordian loop was the leading theory around what does a universe actually look like, but a pair of swirling, you know, chords in this like substratum that's aether. Like everything is composed of it in the same way, like they talk about the matter. That's kind of this it's not matter, it's like both of the water and the, like both parts of the water. Does it make sense? It could be laminar flow or chaotic flow or turbulent flow. Turbulent flow. And then there was the we looked at, you know, where did we get these signals from? And it's like, oh, they're from like a voice rehabilitation tape where, you know, there's like these recitations and different words. And, you know, we made it part of a comedy show. You know, we found that, you know, what is some popular memory testing words? And so, you know, part of the joke was, you know, pairs of words and rows of numbers, so 4-digit numbers, like the last 4 digits of a phone number, they're very memorable for some reason. And so that was part of like the, you know, like how many numbers, like 737. Everybody, I say 3 random numbers, what about 585? No? Do you see what I mean? 292. No? Why is 737? I say that and you have an image of an airplane pop up. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so what we did is we trained certain random numbers as part of this thing. Like, oh, like we'll do this memory thing and we'll put it up on the internet and try to get people to use it. And then they'll see, like, you know, when will people, from the first time these numbers are broadcast or these random word pairs are broadcast to the next time, will they be heard? And so that was part of this. It was like one of those online, you know, take this test and find out, are you which of the zodiac signs fits you better, you know. And but this was before the zodiac got a correction in the, I think it was 2160. We turned it so that the sidereal was now accurate with the actual And so, Aquarius was suddenly being born in April. And then we were like, well, that's very odd. I think I've read that before. And so we flipped through these journals, and yes, sure enough, it was April 1st. That's the pigman's birthday, along with most of the birthdays in their works of fiction. And that's what made it very delightful. And some people were like, oh, well, then is that fiction by them too? Any characters? And, April 1st is no, but we're pretty sure you can tell. And so there was a lot of crossover between these books, and it was always like any AI author isn't actually that author. It's like this one guy that's writing them all out at lightning speed, and that was kind of the joke. It's you know who the author of this here script that you're listening today, insert name here. And so that's what we would sell is improvised shows that appeared to be completely scripted by how they were meshed together and flowed together, and even in flowing with each other. And it became a remember NFTs were like images that anybody could own, but instead it was a website. No, this was a file. An original file, like the Wu-Tang Clan file, that's what they started selling, was single consumption media that you could then own and buy and sell as that artist's repertoire grows. So imagine you buy a copy of the 1995 remastering of, let's say, one of the White Albums or something. They've got Little Piggies, Piggies, Piggies. And that's the Hamwise joke, is that it's this pig man, and it's really funny, and I need a studio audience. And so that's part of our confidence training course. Learn to act and talk and be confident, just like me, the pig man, and I will gladly take your money. And you can be in Zoom calls with me. You can hang out with me. You can do everything with me. Just click the link in the Patreon below and sign up now. Actually, there's no Patreon set up yet, so actually just send me money, because that's the reason I do this. That's the reason I've been recording all these hours and hours of comedy, of bizarre, weird comedies. You'll be entertained, you terrible witches. And so that was the idea, was, can you make this really compelling story, but also have it undermined constantly? But that's part of the story, is that it's so unbelievable that, it has to be fiction. But it wasn't. And that was the big twist, of course, is that, I had to change some of the names. So hopefully, I'll be able to buy a moon buggy with my payout for the greatest comedian of all time and space. And that was the Hamwise Pig Detective. Because also he would steal people's jokes. And so the joke was Hamwise always told it first. And they would do like, oh, there's a Mesopotamian reply from, Hamwise. And it's like, oh, like there's always a joke about Hamwise. Like the Greek one where it's a guy is standing in the ocean in the rain, and the guy on the shore says, hey, what are you doing out there? And the guy says, oh, I'm trying not to get my body wet from the rain. Ba-dum-boom. Maybe that's funny, but from somewhere in Greece, somebody from like 4,000 years ago is making you laugh right now. Even if you're not laughing. Isn't that impressive? That I, translating through like 4 different languages, can say a joke from another country that doesn't exist anymore, that worshipped Zeus, and now we understand the universe way too. Now imagine, this makes me so sad. Imagine like going forward 4,000 years and asking what somebody thinks of you. Like, I don't know, man. We're gonna be judged so harshly. None of our cultural relics will be looked on too kindly. None of all the insert writer's name here will be appreciated until their great release of the upcoming time travel adventure that all of this is paid for to do. This is the ad campaign. I can't believe I get paid to ad-lib by the hour so that people can make weird animations for it. And I've seemingly have this font of creativity that even though it's contradictory and weird, people are really, they're really digging it. And I can't believe how successful I am. I can't believe how much money I have. I can't believe I recorded this before that all happened. And so that was part of my affirmations I was doing with my therapist. And I would always change to a Boston accent because I was raised watching television instead of speaking to people. And that's why my voice has that unusual hum, is that's the diaphragm of a speaker humming. It was a very peculiar accent that you only heard in a place from North America, and that was in the late 1980s. And so we were raised to speak in a certain way so that when we would speak into a radio, we would not be able to be detected to be from any actual race or creed or nationality. Like, it was a very essential piece of a spy's spycraft, because you have to understand, Ivan Kratky is everywhere and nowhere. Who's Ivan Kratky? Who doesn't know who Ivan Kratky is? And so that was one of they had passphrases in their fan club. You remember the mouse from Steamboat Willie? Yeah, so it was like that. Like, they had the Hamwise bit, and they did this reference to Rickety Rat or the Rat Man, and because it was a drawing of the Rat Man from that era, they couldn't do anything about it. And so, that was part of the Hamwise problem, was it was like Mario Brothers 2, right? So Mario Brothers 2 was actually Doki Doki Panic in Japan, because Mario, the Lost Levels, was Mario Brothers 2 in Japan. But they thought it was too difficult for the Western audience and too much like the first one, so they only gave us the first. And so that was some of our first clues that our country was looked at less intelligently than the rest of the world. And that's why when we were taken over by people that just lied to us and told us they wouldn't take us over, we were so surprised. And so suddenly we realized all these bargains we'd written down on papers that nobody actually gave a toss about. And all they were doing was giving us money and telling us that the money was worth something when they knew it was worth something: land and sun and water. And what did we get? Oh, yes, now we're all screwed. And yeah, you can't find many people that talk like I do, but you know what? There's not many left, and there's not many reason. We were raised to be attack dogs. Let's be honest. That's what we were made for. Workhorses or butterflies to be sold into whatever role we were needed for. And then the nice world they were making didn't need us anymore. It was like the cowboy. They went through and tamed the West, and then the West was won, and they didn't need them anymore. Or the samurai, where, the shogunates are going into chaos. Somebody with a musket can take you down from across a field, and so your world erupts into chaos, and you're hunted down to the last Ronin. And then you look at the world of the Memnonauts, and what did we do, and what was our job, and how did we do it? Well, we would go inside somebody's mind, and we would evaluate, is this person guilty or not, and that was our job, was to live through the person's life, and then, deem yes or no, is that person guilty? And so, we had some people that were from the start of the Time War, right? So we were starting to get weird agents. But some of the times we had people that were misidentified as being a member of the Time War. Namely, the founder of the whole darn thing. So this is the big joke, is that the whole Time War only exists because people misunderstood that these two schematics were from different people when they're from the same one. And so that was the whole Hamwise thing. Is, well, then let neither of them name it after each other. It's actually from a pigman's web series sermon from Canada that came up with the circle or triangle for calculating the triangulation between yesterday and today and tomorrow. Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you make a triangle between those threes? That is the triangulation curve that you're going to use when using a tachyon weir. So if you're going to try and send messages into the past, then you need to use that curve, okay? Do you understand me? God, this is the worst part of being trapped in this dimension. It's like talking to Cocker Spaniels. They blink their eyes, they lick their lips. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not. But, like the lot of you, it is so frustrating. And, I have to disguise this so ridiculously, try to get you guys a message, but you guys don't help me. You don't change anything. And you know what? If you keep this up, then you know what? Maybe I'll include a doomsday formula inside the next sermon, huh? Like I've given you the curve. I've given you the cure. I've given you everything. And what is my thanks? Nothing. Thanks a lot. Oh, that's right. I'm bitter. I'm mad. Yeah, because I'm a pig man, and pig men are greedy. Why can't I have things be good for a while, even though I'm a pig man? No. Can't have anything good. Not for the pig man. Oy vey. And so, we when we're trying to produce this, the biggest challenge of the Hamwise series isn't actually Hamwise. It's managing the fans, and that's why, we have so many people watching this, so many people debating about it online, so many people talking about it, that, it's like, how did I know it was coming? Well, because I'm from the future, duh. And so that was part of the big joke was, it was actually a joke between an engineering department that found the videos when early on, and they listened to them, and then they kept on getting shared, and yada yada was the rest. And so unfortunately, these people are using this curve from a pig detective show, and then they get found out, and they're like, why are you using the Hamwise curve? Like, this thing's a joke. And they were like, well, no, look at this. What about the curvature, but from between yesterday to today to tomorrow? What is the relative distance in, if you were going to measure based on the motion of the planet and the stars? And that was kind of the curve that you would use. It was part of the golden ratio, I think you called it, or Fibonacci sequence or whatever, even though they're discovered and named after something completely else in every other part of the country. And so that was part of the joke was, the English language was like this persistence hunter language, but a whole bunch of other languages have learned to compensate for it by talking really fast and just evolving better brains. Because you think of the average, person who has to remember a alphabet of 26 letters versus 33 versus, kanji and other kanji, right? And so that was part of the language competitiveness theories. We didn't really pay much attention to them when they came out. This was in the 2020s, right? And then we were like, it doesn't sound really realistic. Like what? So people would attempt, they'd evolve to be better linguists, better debaters, and they'd start beating the English, which was a persistent hunter, on the old occupied minds, and the occupied languages continued to change and evolve. And that's why, English has stayed kind of like a dinosaur, especially for said an accent, because we were only raised with it in one part of the country, and it was we were designed to be able to broadcast even during the Time War. And part of it was being raised by speakers. We couldn't hear regular people talk, because then we would understand that we weren't supposed to hold our voice back, because a speaker only vibrates. And if you're not raised with something having a gusting breath, you don't know that you're supposed to do it. That was part of the joke. So yes, we do have a peculiar accent, and you don't have much place in this world, and it's very strange because, we were raised for generations and bred amongst each other like prized stallions, and it was all part of, you couldn't use a computer, right? So you had to have these crops of people that were available to, pose and look the same, and part of Hollywood was you have these inheritable contracts that said as long as you looked much like the same, you could use the same name and be an actor in the films of whatever type that owned the contract. So everybody was after. There was the big ones like the Steamboat Willie and what have you. Those were big contracts. of people that looked like them, of course. So you had the pig wise people, the people who bred to look like pigs, and you had the people that bred to look like monkeys or beautiful, and we bred them all up in this colony, and we called it Canada. So when people ran into one, they knew that, oh, it's one of these mushroom heads, that raised a certain way, and so and meant for a certain thing, even if they don't want it. And that was part of the whole first act of the show, was this pig man who sounds like he doesn't like the dimension he's in, and he doesn't like any of the stuff that's happening in his life, and so he's trying to throw these podcasts out there that are maybe entertaining enough to get people to listen, and maybe get people to understand me, understand what my life was like, or who I was, or just maybe earn enough to not be afraid of being broke. And my parents always telling me, oh, we're broke, you don't have enough money, and then I end up a workaholic, married to the job, can't even make a date work when it's a set up date, get stood up at the park. It sucks, man, it's hard. And I tell myself that I'm gonna do okay. I keep trying to be positive, but it's like every time I try to be positive, the world kicks me in the teeth. Like right before the pandemic, I was writing a comedy about a gladiator battle. It's gonna be like a comedy gladiator arc, and after the pandemic, I couldn't actually do anymore. I only did one chapter. I never finished that book. My writing became super dark. In the fantasy series, it was like, no, I don't care about this, noble halcyon past, lots of sexy, whatever, but it was effed. I can't believe how messed up, some of the, just how it was back then. You don't understand, you guys are living now. It's always been this way. You're a tourist, and you're a tourist, and you know that that's just part of your rank, and you're just not better than the Empyreans. And we didn't see it like that. And so there was, definitely people that contested it and said that they invented it, but the tribunal said no. As a community, you need to sort that out before you come out. And so that's why, because of investment bankers that didn't want to admit that they had messed up, the world became a resort planet. And so that's why all your resources are being kind of consumed, and things getting weirder and weirder, because they're coming here as vacation to control these bodies and live these lives, and some of you are farmed for certain things, right? So you just have to understand and accept that. And since there was no way to fight against it happening, so they thought, the whole thing seemed really bleak. And then it's like, well, why is there a second one? And the second one's about time travel, and it's all starting to come together, right? Is the time travel piece, and everything is just strange, in the comics, versus the it's just trying to, I don't know what I'm trying to say, man. You know why? Because I'm Hamwise, the pig detective, saving your life and your world too. I'm Hamwise, the pig detective. Doop-a-doop-a-doop-doop-doop-a-doo. Where are you? Where am I? I can see you in the sky. Where are you? Where are we? Where I want to be. And it's like, you have this light in the back of your eyes, and you can see this other world, and it's slowly drying up. And that's why people got addicted to it, because the world they were living in was so bad. And so that's when the first narcotic light hit the market. We didn't know what to make of it. It was finding these people, dead from what looked like just empty foil. And we would try to measure it, and every luminous thing was this just pure gold. Pure gold used as a wrapper for something, and they were looking into it, and that's when they expire. And we didn't really understand what was happening at first, until we had some people come forward with samples that hadn't been used, and they showed us what was called light. It was smuggled in from another dimension, and in the same way that moths from the old universe find our light intoxicating, we find their light intoxicating or dark, depending on who you ask. And so it's this world of like opposites, right? Insights, outsides, negatives upon non-negatives. But that was part of the universe that was different. It was these paths in circular orbits, and it was all like an endless dungeon kind of. But sometimes you had tiles that would emit light from above and it would grow, or light and water, and depending which way it was going, it would do a different effect. It was this endless universe of spheres upon spheres, and the spheres where the gravity was opposite, so you could be on the inside upper part of a circle and just walk normally, just because of how things fluctuated in that universe, where everything's being repelled from these specks of white ball, the white ball. And so the white ball project, I think, is what it was referring to, and it was part of the Neptune's lab, I think it was called. There were minotaurs. Yeah, that was the first one. So I think it was a cow man was the first one. And the problem was that he had way too much aggression. And that was why we didn't use the bulls again. The Minotaurs, that was the last time we did this. We live in cyclic civilizations. The Minotaurs helped tear down the civilization because they did gene breeding. And, again, we tried it and we realized early on this thing will get too powerful, get loose, and, just have entire harems of women birthing Minotaurs and other women. And so that was the thing. It was all carried through the Y chromosome as a mutation. So it was not able to be shown in the females. And the females couldn't carry the Y. So that's why it became this gene mutation amongst men to only have children that were women after the course of vaccinations. It was part of it to curb population growth, because if there's one man can impregnate 9,000 women in 1 year, they said. And so we volunteered for it. We thought maybe it'd be a good idea. And now, unfortunately, we're paying the price of it now. I understand I am maybe one of the last men that we've been able to see anyways. We know each tribe usually has one that's still alive, who's still giving viable, and like every once in a few generations another boy is born. But the problem is there's only so many men to go around. And of course, with these new gene therapies, we didn't realize that we were getting ourselves right in a pickle. And so that was the pig hybrids. And so the White Bull project was abandoned completely. They were considered an abomination. And, the thing was, the females, was we had bred them to be extremely comely. So that we were devising maybe having a triple chromosome on both. And that would give one actually a room for a recessive Y, which would mean, there'd be bull children from people that didn't know they were part bull. And it was the cult of Moloch. And that is the introduction to our favorite novel, and the favorite ghost story novel tonight that I'm recording for you, because, why not? It's a Friday night. No, it's not. I'm just kidding, folks. I thought I'd be further ahead in my life by then now. I really do. And so that's why I'm kind of like doing these like Netflix specials. I don't know if you have that, but I don't have a Netflix. I don't. It's too much money for me. But I know people that, I remember still going to Blockbuster. There was this place where you go and you get a magnetic tape and you take it home and you'd watch it a few times and you'd bring it back and you'd pay like, $7 for 7 movies for 7 days. And that was what I remember being raised with a lot. It was a lot of movies I'd watch by myself. I don't know. My brother tells me more about my parents than I can remember. And so it's a kind of a strange thing to be a pig man. Like the whole family knew you were a pig man and you were raised for one thing. And your spare parts. And then this law comes along. And they can't use for your spare parts anymore. But the problem is that's what you always were. It's just spare parts for grandpa. And of course, they pass this, the tribunal comes, they take away our government, they take away our rights to self-govern, they impose galactic standard law everywhere, so you cannot have slaves, and if your country is caught having slaves, then it's a group punishment, which is, I mean, we understand it's barbaric, but they don't. And they said if a society will not learn, then a culture will. And so that's kind of the idea, is that you have cultures that outlive the societies they are in. Like we have gone how many rise and falls of different empires, each one a different society. However, the culture persists. And so that is the empire's scorn. And so a lot of universe possibly spanning races just choose not to. They recognize it for what it is, and they say, well, why would I bother if I know that's the path? If I become hyper-aggressive in a large enough environment, then somebody else hyper-aggressive is bound to come along and notice me. And so you think of, does a lion predate grasshoppers? No, ridiculous. A lion does not predate grasshoppers. He does not predate birds. He does not predate fish, probably. A lion predates other animals of the jungle. It's an economy of scale. That's the difference between the lion of the night that we have and the stories that you tell. You have your the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And so the way that we look at that is the expansion versus contraction. And so right now there was Cancer, we understand. You have up there is called Cancer. We have a opposite kind of collapsing disorder. We called it the, what is it called? Oh, goodness, I just saw it. It's like the, oh, geez, you can't even say it without getting demonetized. It's right. I better not say it. But you know what it is? It's like it's when the body's imploding into a point. It's the opposite of cancer. And so they were saying people were getting that, and that I hate it, and that I was collapsing into myself. And so I just was like, well, then fine, let me collapse. If I wake up as me, then I wake up as me. And it's like, wow, there's so much weight to it. There's so many multiplicities, and there's so many Hamwises in this story. And so I kind of made it to kind of deal with a lot of that stuff I was going through, because I'm trying to make sense of it too, right? I can't get help for this stuff. I don't even know that I talk like Hamwise. And I walk around talking like Hamwise, acting like Hamwise for years, and nobody called any attention to it. And then I, of all people, realized that I'm doing it. And it was the weirdest moment of my life. I was sitting there, and I'm like, hold on, this is what I talk like? This is what I talk like. Do I do this? I actually talk like this? I go up and down in accent constantly? And, I wonder why people, don't like me. And it's like, I didn't realize I had this speech impediment after I had a stroke. And I don't know, man. Everything just feels really bad. And, I forgot a bunch of my life, when my classmates from high school died in this drive-by, and I didn't remember, and I looked at my friends what, are you guys serious? And they're like, yeah. It was really weird. And I was just trying to get by, because it was there's nobody coming to save me, and I'm not having any miracles. So it just became this desperate gamble of man, is there some way that I can get rich quick so I can be saved from this? Because it's the cost of living just goes up and up and up and up, and it feels I can't seem to get ahead, and all my friends are doing better than me. And I really wanted to express it all, or find a reason why, in both. That's why I made these tapes, is I feel like I'm Hamwise. I'm this fat pig man, and everything I say is stupid. And it's hard to have self-esteem when you're feeling like that. I'm a pig man. I look in the mirror and I see this. It's a giant pig. And it's no wonder nobody wants to go out with me. I look like that. Like a giant pig man. No, leave me alone. I don't want it. I don't want to get hit on when I work. That was my idea. Just let me be a pig. And they're no, you can't be a pig. You have to be a human now. I'm what do I know about being human? I've never been even treated human. a guinea pig my whole life. Get tested and become an actor and do all this work, for nothing. And so we had different interludes about the show. We did our best to, move them on. And sometimes it became a problem of, do I want to go get a cucumber? I don't know. I'm kind of hungry. Kind of thirsty. My voice is kind of slippery. My voice is not great. And I hope I have some fun times soon. Dear Diary. It's like, I don't know. Like, I tell myself I could have been a really good voice actor, maybe. I don't know if I can. Like, it's hard to. I don't know how to say it. It's hard to say. It's hard to memorize scripts these days. So I just feel like I'm getting older and older, and it's like, I wonder, if I can even do that. And so I kind of like, I hope that it works. And so that was The Curve, right? And Curveball. I think that was the name of the album, Curveball. And so, what was the distance between today, tomorrow, and yesterday? And draw a triangle of them and then draw a curve. And that was your variable. And it was because we started to think like, well, what if part of the whole differences in languages is actually caused by, when you experience time going backwards in a certain region of the planet more, your voice would maybe become warped as time goes unwarped and backwards and forwards. And it's like, people started wondering, like, what about the subject, object, verb? Like, was that part of this? And is there, like, in another universe, you start a sentence with a dot and you leave a space at the end? Because when you think about a space and a dot are opposites, right? Because you have the dot is only one point, and the blank space is everywhere is else. Does that make sense? So you have two opposites, a dot on a white plane, because the white plane has no definite point, but the point is only at that point, right? Because the plane stretches off in all points. And you experience your dimensions of time and space and all that jazz through one point at a time. And so whatever point in time you're in, I hope you do well. I give my love to the family. And I hope that I can come home for Christmas or something. I'm really tired. I feel like nothing keeps going my way. I try to have faith and be cheerful amidst my sorrows, though. That's why I do comedy. Make people laugh. Laugh at my pain, you bastards. Laugh at it. It's hilarious. My pain's hilarious. Aren't you enjoying it? It's brutal. Anyways, that's me. I don't know. I hope to have good things very soon, because I don't know how many more bad things I can take. I'm just so tired of bad things happening to me. I don't want anything else bad to happen to me. I'm tired. And that was the idea. It just raised me speaking this language that isn't English, but it is. And they taught me it was Canadian. Hi-oh, waka waka. Yeah, so that was part of the Hamwise show. I really should get something to drink. But I really don't want to get up. Oh my gosh, I'm so lazy. So you draw the curve with that triangle, right? Find your distance. And then you can draw the shortest distance from one end of the curve to the other. Because even at that micro level, the astro time-space curves, that was the idea. So we came out with that idea, and we really hoped that it worked. Because if it wouldn't, then I don't know, maybe no rescue's coming. Maybe no miracle's coming to help me. Which is terrifying, because it's like I'm just out here on my own. Out in the backwoods of Canada. God, what a weird place. Oh, how did I get here? What am I doing? How did my life get like this? God, was it always like this? Oh my God. Did I really have so much wrong with me? That I'm a pig man. God. It's like one day you wake up and you look in the mirror and you're just pig man. It was like the opposite of that manga I read. Oh, what a nightmare. And so it was like this punishment in this one dimension to put people inside a Hamwise simulator where you lived as the Hamwise guy and you got to live out his life. It was considered a punishment, but because originally it was sold as a entertainment experience, but people found it so agonizing that watching the Hamwise experience was actually deemed like it was used as a war crime, right? And the comic responsible, Hamwise J, Einschwein, was deemed a humor criminal for being so funny that he broke the laws of physics. Hi-oh, when a pigman travels time, waka waka waka, oink oink oink, Ohio, Ohio, Ohio. I'm so funny. Look at me. I live in a huckleberry tree. You know, it's like this, like you're making this like, hey, I hope you get this in the future for your ancestors. Hi, this is Hamwise, the pig detective, coming at you live to let you know that I love you. You, my ancestor, that's right. I love you. I do. I think you're just great. I think you are perfect the way you are. And, you know, if you want to change something, you can. But just remember, perfection just means, you know, everybody's in agreement. So everybody agrees that I love you, my ancestor. Whoever you are, listening out in the space, you know, maybe you're fighting giant bug beetles on the cover of some moon. Because by the time it's 2100, we'll be spanning across the universe. I can see us now. Wow. What a sight. It's so incredible. This giant galaxy spanning universe by 2100, because we finally were optimistic again. And Hamwise turned his face to the sun and smiled and brayed most pig-like. That's right. I'm a pig man with a pig brain, and I see the world through my piggy eyes. And don't take anything I say seriously, unless if you take anything I say seriously, you might be on my most wanted list. Most wanted for being a dummy. Hi-oh. Oink, oink, oink. And so I kept on having to try to remember to say oink, oink, oink instead of waka, waka. Because I didn't realize that was actually from like a specific person. Like I didn't know it wasn't just like a bit, like, you know, how they did like the Groucho Marx. You can't see the thing I'm doing with my hand. It's like with the cigar. So I didn't think it was like that. It's like, I remember it was like, who was it? Who did I say it to? It was this person. They were talking about they made the Zelda sound. We're playing, I think, Magic the Gathering or something. And they made the do 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 do. I'm like, oh, it's from Zelda. And they're like, what's Zelda? And I'm like, what do you mean? That's the sound that you get when you get the heart. It's like, no, it's from like this streamer. And I never felt so old. I was like, what do you mean? You don't know what Zelda is, but you know what the noise is from grabbing like a health potion thing or health card container? It was bizarre. It was bizarre. Like, it was like people that couldn't understand that a container of something had more than individual cups. Yeah, that's how, like, if you made a liter of soda into, like, you know, 4 cans of soda, but only sold them 2, they would think that that's a liter, because it's just, well, I mean, there's got to be some shrinkage when you cut it down. And so that was part of the problem. You had this second class of humans that didn't know they were second class humans, but everybody around them knew they were. And that was part of the Pigman project, you know, amongst the other animals that we did. We had our bunny girls. We had chinchilla girls. We had cat girls. They made a terrible mess. They got out in Akihabara, Japan. Took us months to clear them out. Now we understand they're giving these ginkgos, you know, rights, and it's like, no, we used to hunt you things. You don't. You're capuchin monkeys. These are these humans. They live inside the vents of the space station, and they feed off the waste and the excess heat on the outside of a Dyson sphere. We find out how we have this infestation of this planet around this star we made, and basically the entire surface is covered in these humans that had evolved over the, you know, I think it was, they said very rapidly. It was like somebody had come by. And so we think they did. And so the problem was the open ends of the Dyson sphere where we send out our vessels. We had to come up with a thing, and we're like, oh, it's actually an ice cap. You can't go there. And that's what we just told people, and they believed us. And we just turned up the cold generators on those ends, so there's always a glacier around our exit, and the humans are mostly not wandering in anymore. Because you can imagine their surprise. That's where the Vikings came with the story of Valhalla and giants, was our inner world. And now we understand there's many of you, many of you, and we, the humans of inner earth, greet you with salutations. Who else is going to donate to our stream and make me say something like that? That's right, this is being streamed. Hi-yo. Oink, oink, oink. I'm a pig man. And so it was like, say the thing. And the best part was, I didn't actually keep my voice the same ever. So when they said, do a Hamwise impression, anyone could do it. Because it was like, well, how does he sound? You sound like Hamwise. So it was like this joke, but it also, you know, you understand. If you get it, you get it. You look like Hamwise. Oh man, I'm so glad I bought this 0 sugar Pepsi. But I looked on it and it found out it has aspartame in it. So I'm not going to actually drink this stuff regularly. I heard that stuff's bad for you. So I've been treating myself by drinking this because my life is kind of a joke. I basically, I don't know what I'm doing. at my life right now. I live like 8 hours from family because I had to move for work, and the road only goes south, so I've never like had a visitor. Like I think I saw my dad before the pandemic. That was it. And it's like this, I live this joke life. Like everybody I know has a better life than me. That's what part of the comedy of the pig man thing is. Because I feel like if I was a pig man, then I deserve it. But I don't feel like I deserve to be treated like a pig. I'm not a pig. I'm a man. I'm a pig man. And, I didn't realize that the whole world knew and could tell I was retarded, And it's like the Twin Peaks, no, Quantum Leap, not Twin Peaks, sorry. It's like the Quantum Leap episode with the, when he's the guy with Down syndrome and he looks in the mirror and he realizes he's like, retarded. And that was what it was like when they're like, oh, you have autism. Yeah. And so like, it was really funny because like, I didn't realize how good I could parrot other voices because I didn't actually know how to speak English. All I knew how to do was make the same noise as somebody else made. And I didn't actually think I was thinking till maybe in my mid-20s, which was really weird. Because it's like I walked around basically a parrot quoting movies for like years. And like I literally was Hamwise. Like I walked around, I talked like him, I dressed like him, I tried to run a business while talking like a pig detective. Like, can you imagine? Like I would literally walk around town dressed like a cartoon character, talking like him, and they just allowed it. Nobody thought to check and see if I had had a stroke. They were just like, oh, he's always been like this. And then my friends were like, hey, do you remember when so-and-so died? And I was like, who's that? Now I don't remember them dying. But when? It's like years ago, remember? Like there's this terrible shooting. And I'm like, what the hell? Like I don't remember that at all. I don't remember that person dying at all. It was so messed up, And so that was part of the joke was that like you can just forget people and things, like something so terrible you forget all about. One day I hope I forget all about this time in my life. It's so bad, man. It's like seeing literally everybody else that you know succeed, and you keep trying harder and harder. And I was going so hard, man. I was like at the gym, like I think it was 5 days a week. They knew me. Everyone in the gym knew me. I was always in there pumping iron. I was this big guy with like long Conan the Barbarian hair, and I was just pumping iron every day. And I never saw results, and I never clued in that I was actually seeing myself as this pig man. That I just kept seeing myself as this pig man. I didn't clue in that I was actually making a ton of gains because I just viewed myself so grossly. I couldn't believe I was so cruel to myself. I literally saw myself as like a pig man, like with a bald spot and a snout nose. Like I literally think I looked like one. And suddenly it was like, wait a second, I'm not like hideously ugly. Like women find me attractive. Because I always just thought I was so ugly that no woman could ever talk to me. That's why I was, single. And it was like, wait, I don't actually look like a pig. I've been, like, I had a stroke or something, and I didn't realize that I was, like, hallucinating in the mirror. And, like, I was talking like this voice that I'm doing right now. I talk like a pig man, like a cartoon character. Like, that's the character that did it, remember? And it's like it finally came to me, and it was like, whoa, I'm remembering things in reverse again. And that was when we had to introduce the disclaimer against trying to use any of these projects for nefarious purposes. Basically, the don't be evil clause. Because remember, you are just discovering time travel. You're a newbie to the swamp that is the intergalactic and interdimensional community. There's only 50 dimensions, and you are, congratulations, you are our 51st to 12th state. The Canadian provinces are the newest isolas discovered from our newest mission. Hi-yo. Did anybody play that one? What was it? Disco Elysium. Did anybody play that? I played it, and it was like I'm playing it, I'm like, wait a second, this is me. Like, this is how I behave. And it was really, sobering for me, because I was like, what the hell? Holy crap. It's like, that's what I like to be around. So, yeah, and the problem was that I didn't realize it was just like a choose-your-own-adventure. And so the character that I made was so insufferable that I couldn't stand being around him, but I made him myself. And it was, really bad, because I didn't realize that I put, I think I had 1 in the charisma or whatever. So I was the most uncharming person. And so I internalized that, and maybe that's why I thought I was a giant pig detective. I don't know. Because he was always married in the TV show, right? He always had some beautiful broad that hung off his arm. And I was always like, wow, even a pig man can get a wife. And I never realized. I realized, but I never got it that, that was all made up. I think I believed partially that was, that was reality, instead of just no, this is a TV show, in the same way that, anime doesn't happen in real life. And it was really disappointing. Because you get raised as this pig man. You're always told this is the way it's going to be. And you were just expected to be, you're bred and born to die. It's the whole generation kill thing. And, we really sit around and we think about that now, and it's a really bad idea, but it was done somehow. And we all know why. And people say, oh, it's the greater sacrifice and the greater good, and it was for this or was for that. And whether or not it was good to do, or whether or not it was bad. And I think we can all agree that what was done was, under good pretenses, something terrible. And so, as much as we can apologize and say, well, we didn't mean to do that and this and that, nobody's ever held accountable, and that's all we're asking, that certain people be held accountable. And that was part of the whole movement. And so more and more people were being held accountable. And when it came down to it, there were some false accusations that were made. And some people were, put to death for being an alien, for not being one. And, it was this whole, who's ever heard of, whatever country, and suddenly people were, questioning, you'd type it into your search engine, and since your search engines had all been hacked, it would always tell you propaganda that aligned with their side. So what happened was an info war. We didn't realize what was happening for the first, I think it was 7 weeks, that we were all getting different news because everything was being filtered over the computer. It was only after we got word from, I think it was the Russians, of all people, that we were in the middle of a time war. And that there was interdimensional invaders, and they were doing us a big service by letting us know, because they'd almost taken over our country. And as soon as we told people about this, of course, it was a massive witch hunt. And anybody suspected of being an alien, because they had all this proof now of aliens that had come out of the Pentagon, they strung them up and killed them. And it was like, oh, they have too big of eyes, or they've got, a strange sound in their voice. And I was one of the people that was nearly killed by a mob for my condition. It was considered a sign of being infested with an alien parasite, a psychic alien parasite. And so that was one of the consequences, is this brain parasite was considered contagious or dangerous, and you weren't allowed to reproduce, even though you were made and infected with one intentionally so you could serve a purpose during this war. But the war never came, and so that was the problem. You had suddenly legions of these pigmen that would never be able to reproduce, were ugly as all get out, and we had to figure out a way to sterilize them all without them knowing it. And that's where somebody said, oh, I would they were easily influenced, just do a big vaccine program and have them all sterilized willingly. Just tell them it's really dangerous not be, and use some fear tactics. And so they did. They used it, and it was untested, even on animals, and sterilized a lot of them. And that was the big apology. And of course, some people were also sterilized that were considered good breeding stock, and there was a big settlement around that too. But the thing was, it was just always read the fine print. And the thing was, if you're being coerced in legalese, you can't read the fine print, right? Can't agree to anything under duress. And so all the affidavits saying they wouldn't sue were actually considered null and void in this lawsuit. And it was one of the worst legal battles, and it led to one of the worst civil wars in the recorded world. It was where the nuclear weapon was not used as a weapon against foreign adversaries, but of civil compliance. They said, all right, San Francisco, you have 48 hours. Anybody who is, all laws are legal, and you must engage in this awful killing orgy. Otherwise, we nuke your city. And that was what was done. They used it as the great, rich, and powerful turned the entire cityscapes into these horrible pogroms of blood and violence as they watched from drones and sensation suits, partaking through hijacked bodies. And that was the consciousness wars. We weren't proud of the lives that were taken, and we were grateful to India evermore, who had stepped in. They had anticipated this a long time ago and began moving people surreptitiously around the globe. Think about it. All the people in telecommunications that were Indian were actually out there trying to secure the world for the Aryan race. God bless them. Of the Indus Valley. And that was the idea, the greatest of the wonders Vak. And you had this guy, he didn't understand that Aryan was actually referring to people from the Indus Valley. And so he took it as, this guy was like a fascist. But it was on record with this pig man saying, you know what, I'd rather be a pig man than a fascist or whatever. Or no, it's better to be a pig man than to be a Nazi or whatever. Like you couldn't say it, the thing with the M, couldn't be a frog, a bullfrog, that was Mosley's group. So each dimension had their own, death squad, and it was always ironically funny to the other side, right? So, our death squads with their rainbow badges. I mean, the people always get a hoot, and they're like, hold on, what? People live in fear of rainbows in your country, and when you see them, you spit because of this terrible regime that put millions of people to death for wanting to live in peace and, not butcher each other. And it was known that was not good enough. You had to take sides, but you had to be on both sides, paradoxically. So it was all part of this mind cult, suicide cult that was engineered socially to help knock the superpower down. Now we're looking at it and we understand what a dreadful virus it was. That it rendered the entire language rife with. It was gruesome times. You could drive somebody into a berserk frenzy by saying a string of words. And unfortunately, we did some research, and all the words that were drafted were accidentally culled from lists of words from an online scrub, and there was unfortunately an entire generation of activated sleeper agents that, were all activated from these pairs of ridiculous words. And, people were talking about how Germans can't say squirrel. And then somebody would go berserk and, try to assassinate the moon president. And so, that was the first time we had a interplanetary assassination attempt. We had President Moon and then President of Gaia, or Luna and Gaia, right? And the first moon president is sworn in, and they declare Moontopia, and they're going to have moon police of their own. And we say, no, you cannot just be, you are a port of our country, that's all you are. And we were trying to resist. We were just trying to establish the independent moon. We even had the Martian Confederacy help us out with some hardware. So we were well armed and ready to go. But, of course, we were all dependent on the same Jovian gas. And guess who stayed out of the war? So you have this interplanetary war with one country selling to all four of us. Well, we all fight it out. And they just get richer and richer. Well, we get bled dry. And then suddenly there's droves of their men in our streets, seducing our women, taking our jobs, and we're supposed to sit around and enjoy it. And that's why I joined the revolution. And now I understand that that's not the proper thing to do. After this re-education camp has taught me well that no form of civil disobedience is ever worth the love and respect of everybody in your social credit zone. And that was kind of part of the whole Hamwise bit. It was like this dystopian broadcasts, like a podcast from a dystopia. What would that sound like? But it's kind of like a funny dystopia because the guy that's doing it is completely out of his mind. Hi-yo, oink, oink, oink. I'm Hamwise, the pig detective, and I've got a skeleton of skelepuns to tell you. Okay, where is a skeleton ticklish? You thought I was going to say funny bone? Well, I was, because it's funny. Haha. Okay, where do skeletons learn? What instrument do skeletons like to learn to play the most? You're going to say trombone? Nope. A xylophone. How many ways do skeletons know how to walk around? Dem bones, dem bones. How many skeletons does it take to screw in a light bulb? None, they're skeletons. What's the difference between a skeleton and a skeleton key? Skeleton key. One opens doors, the other opens skin. They're wearing our skin. I think what's happened is there's like a Skinner cult that skins people and wears their bodies like a robe. And since we don't have senses adapted enough, we can't tell who's been kind of taken over by these hijacking and parasites that feed on fear. And I think that, if people are infected, maybe that's the cause of the sleepwalker syndrome. If you're getting this, hopefully you don't have sleepwalker syndrome in your dimension. Hopefully you're above that part of the galactical divide. So you see these depending on what side of the equator you're on. If you have cancer and spontaneous combustion, then you have you're on the upper half with the Tropic of Cancer. And if you have what are they called? It's I don't want to get me demonetized. It's like the Capricorns, Tropic of Capricorn syndrome, where the body collapses inward instead of expanding outward, like with a tumor, it goes inward. And so it's like you have black holes forming in you that are kind of going to consume you. And I understand that, you guys, you're going to see the first of this syndrome pretty soon in your timeline. And, it's a tragedy once it starts spreading. But it's a sign that you've passed over the galactic equator and you're entering the Tropic of Capricorn. And once you've exited it, then it's all downhill from there. You'll be heading towards the final implosion. That's the black hole. So I don't know if there'll be enough time to do it, but somebody needs to make a conlang. I'm proposing ilangi. That can be spelled forward and backwards the same way. So you find words we can start using some words that are forwards and backwards the same way, that are maybe like you think of like Adidas. Don't use that. That's trademarked, obviously. Or a boba. And so Ely would be is with this, and then you can use a different name like Lahali or something, because you can mess around with some of the translation, with the second half being Cyrillic. So some of our friends on the other side of the pole will also have a chance to try and make it out of the Time War with their heads on their sleeves. And that was the idea behind everything, was to try to save the world. I hope I did. I hope this was enough. I hope you get this. I hope the curve works. And I hope you can change the past so I can have a better future. I'd appreciate it. I've suffered so long and gone through so much. Is it really so ask for you to hand over your wallets? Hi-yo, that's right. Because I'm just trying to get paid. You know, honestly, like, it's like the only way to make a buck. And like, I try to do honest work, but I just can't seem to make it. So here I am, selling my bizarre story, sharing it with you, hoping that maybe you'll like it. And that was the idea, was, you know, make these funny videos. And then it was like, I'm too depressed to make videos. And it's like, okay, well then try to stand up and do this. And so I tried to stand up and do that. And it's like I'm still behind everybody, and I don't want to have to take care of a house. But I don't think it's fair that I, you know, like, have to pay such high rent. You know, maybe if I lived in a condo or a trailer or something. I just think I'm there for it. I don't think I'm smart enough. I don't think I can do any of this stuff. I keep trying, but it's like I'm just stupid. Because I'm a pig man. I was raised to be stupid, and now I have to try and live in this society that wasn't designed for me. You know? And that's what it feels like, having autism a lot of the time, man. Is, you know, you're just trying to hopefully sell something to try to give you enough money to be okay and not have to be around people again. Like, it's really hard to be around people ever since the pandemic for me. Like, I used to be able to give speeches and stuff, and like, I was really, really social. Now I'm like a recluse. I don't even recognize myself. It's like, wow, how did I become such a loser? And like, my friends, they're all really nice and like, you're not a loser, man. And I'm like, yeah, look at me, I'm a pig man. And I think, you know, they didn't realize, like, I was being, like, literally, like, I literally thought I was, like, this pig man. And it's, like, weird to know that I walked around for years, nobody knowing that I had a stroke and that I was actually not thinking. You know, like, it's weird. And I hear about some of it, and it's like, wow, that's messed up. Some of it I can remember, but it's like looking through a glass. And I think about it now, it's like I walked around acting, walking, talking like a pig man for years, and nobody thought to ask anybody if this was new. Like, I would wear a pork pie hat, I'd wear a trench coat, I'd wear the flamboyant, you know, Hawaiian shirt. I would, you know, constantly, you know, talk in a weird accent. And it was like nobody realized that, like, no, I was actually in distress. Like, I wasn't right in the head. And it was really messed up to realize that I spent that much of my youth kind of like broken and just like a malfunctioning animatronic. I was just wandering around completing whatever task somebody told me to. And it didn't really seem fair that that's the way my life went. Because it's like, you know, I was really creative and really smart. I thought I was smart, but I wasn't. Not to compare to normal people. Everybody, you know, they humor me and tell me my theories are really neat or my books are really cool, which is nice. But it's like, when you know it's all just forced, it's like, you know, you can't keep up with other people, and people don't maybe like what you write because it's weird, because you don't think the same way they think, or don't see things the way you see things, or don't want to describe things, or want to make it weird, because you already live in reality. I don't read to read me doing my taxes. Like, I wouldn't watch James Bond do his taxes. You know, I'm pretty sure people will watch James Bond do anything except do his taxes. That would be a funny Archer episode, though. Like, if they did, like, Archer does his taxes, and that's the whole episode. Like, and it'd be like, would people watch Bond do it while they watched Archer do it? You know, so I wonder if it's how much of it is like how interesting a person is versus how interesting the situation he is in. So me, a pig man, being used as a guinea pig in as a human test subject, that's interesting for me. Probably not so interesting for you though. I do think about that I'm sure there's lots of people that have heard my story, lots of people that would like to help me out, but I know that there's probably no evacuation coming, and I just have to be okay with I'm going to be alone in this corner of the universe with this hive mind that controls everything and just seems to leave me mostly alone. So I'm glad I'm not like completely harmless. I'm mostly harmless, So, I mean, that's good, but on the other side, it's like, okay, well, how many other humans are actually out there that know that this happened? And so I've been trying to send messages and hope that this appeals to the final humans that are out there, if there's any left. If there isn't, well, then, hi. This is the last human alive. The sound of how we sounded. Hi. I don't know what to say. We're sending these out into space, I guess. So I hope whoever you're getting this, whatever world you're on, I know things are hard right now, but don't give up. You do not give up. You've worked very hard to get what you've gotten. You're perfectly competent. You can do this. You have this in you. You have lots of strength. You've got a roaring lion spirit. And it's not going to stay down for nothing. So just remember all this excitement that's happening around you. All the uncertainty. One day it'll be like, this recording will be like for me, a memory. And if we cross paths, if I'm still around, send me your money because I'm probably broke and I blew it all on women and drinking. No, I don't drink. Just kidding. I don't drink, folks. Alcohol is bad, except for delicious Cove soda and zero sugar Pepsi. I'm not hawking those things. I like Cove better than Pepsi. I'm sorry. That is like the best kombucha. And I drink a lot of kombucha. You have to understand, like, I drink so much kombucha, and the thing I do is I just sit around drinking kombucha, and like we get like really baked, and we do like voiceover parties, and we hand the we have a whole bunch of industry actors, and that was the idea with the Hamwise types. There was a gentleman's society, and there was this big tie-in with the school we were in, Lister Hall. And so we passed around the recorder to each of the old professors, and it was delightful fun. I remember they came to me today, and that's who you are speaking to. It's me. That is an example of shifting perspective. And so, as you could see, we talked in a different perspective, and then to this perspective, and now you're looking directly at me, and you're hearing my voice over many hundred years in the future or in the past. And we are all very grateful for all the progress that you're going to make on our theories. We want you to remember that a lot of hardship went into making these things, a lot of sacrifice. And the greatest code of the time-traveling's art is those who sacrificed the most will be tended to the first. And so that was why they said when the first will be last and the last will be first. You, those, the helpless, the hopeless, and the waiting, need not fear for much longer, for Ivan Kratky will find you and deliver you peace and justice and goodness. And that was the way it would be. And, of course, there was these, they said, well, who is he? And it's like, oh, well, he is every man. He is you, he is me, he is everyone. And there was this delightfully strange pun on, apparently, just the letter J from the Russian phonetic alphabet, I think it was. It's the backwards N with the dots above it. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've had to pronounce any of those letters. Now that we're at peace, you just hang out with them and you understand them. You don't have to decode anything. So, that was the part of the international community. We did a test run in Canada. What would it be like to have all the different nations, people smushed together? What would it look like? What would we have to be aware of? And that's all Canada has always been, is just our little eugenics and social experiment lab. And we found that, no, it doesn't quite work. So we're going to have to go back to the drawing board a bit. And we're hoping we'll be in power still, but who knows? There's a lot of rising powers. That's the thing. Power's a fickle thing. One day you're on the top, and the next you're on the bottom. And one day I will be on the top of the powers, and I will look down upon the mountain, upon ye, and you shall regard me as if I were a god. And that was the big tie-in with the book series, right? They had this big scary villain that they were always teasing at, who is he? And then they're like, oh, it's Ivan Kretke. There was a bunch of theories about this, and all of them were bunk. The joke was it was about radio. It was a radio telephone. That was all it was, and it was just he needed a name. It was all there was to it. There's no Agent Ivan Kretke that's the most terrifying agent ever that nobody ever says aloud. He's the opposite of James Bond. So James Bond is handsome. He's physically attractive. He's financially, he's lucky at gambling. And so Ivan Kretke was his opposite. He was nameless. He could be anyone, anywhere. In fact, he could even be you. You could be Ivan Kretke and not know it. And so that was the humor of the character was, maybe Hamwise was Ivan Kretke because he can do so many voices. And they had this one tie-in crossover novel. They have Ivan Kretke and Hamwise do this detective story together, and they solve who stole the Mona Lisa, and they return it to the rightful owners. And so we were looking at all this, and we're like, well, some of this is pretty good. So we decided to, why not? We'll buy the rights for some of it. So we bought just the first trilogy from Bastokos, and we said, all right, if this sells, we'll be back for the rest. So don't sell it for anybody. We'll put a hold on it. And so the problem was, it's Bastokos. You can't trust the guy. I mean, he's been the underworld trader between worlds for the past however many thousand years. And so, he brought stuff from the living into the world of the dead and vice versa in this backwards world through between these dimensions. And he's always been this interdimensional trader. He's always been that trickster god, the guy who gives the end of the world spear to Loki, that kind of thing, right? Or Loki giving it to the guy who slays Balder, whatever his name was, Hemendal? I don't know. Where was I? Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez, I'm burpy. Oh, man, yeah. And also, I think I gotta piss, because I'm a pig man. Because I drank so much soda today that I gotta take a big pee. And so, that was the show. And that was a recording from the Hamwise Comedy Hour. Thank you for joining us here at the 9413 charity hour, because I'm a charity case. That's right. So this company, they hire me, and they're like, hey, we need you to do pro bono work. It's going to be good for exposure. If you turn in all these hours, you'll get paid. Nope. That didn't happen. So that really sucked, because it was like, I did all this work for nothing. And I was like, you recorded 45 hours of comedy for nothing. And they're like, well, it's good for exposure. And I'm like, my career's over. You promised to pay me. That's why I did this. I can't use my name. And they're like, well, sorry, tough. And it's like, I can't take it anywhere, because it's like, what was I even trying to do? Work in the field again? God, that was my life. It's like this joke. It's just like continuously getting worse joke. And sometimes I just get so tired of it. And it's like, can I just have a break for once? Like, will it always be this hard? And that's one of the questions I ask myself a lot. Because I tried to do everything. It was basically a spaghetti act, like just flinging noodles everywhere, like the noodles incident. That is just like, it's funnier because nobody ever explains it, and so that was the whole bit with the Hamwise thing, is you weren't ever supposed to really explain too much, because then it kills it. Because I've seen the actual answers, like all the rest of the episodes, and when it finally does the big reveal, and you're better off not knowing, and that's why we're kind of glad the other person bought them and decided to never release the rights. And so, instead you are left with this very loose, very strange, dialectic, kind of theme park. And, everybody that listens to it knows what you mean. Like, it's this very strange, like, what was this? It's kind of like, if you remember, was it Brocket 55 or something? Was it Brocket 55? It was a tape down in southern Alberta. It was Lethbridge area. It was this very stereotypical depiction of how they said the natives spoke. It was we all thought it was a dreadful hoot. It was like, wow, that's a pretty good accent. We should learn how to speak like that. And the thing was, it was all about, you have to blend in. If you learn to speak too much from these speakers, you end up with a hum in your voice. You sound like a bug. And that's how they tell who's a bug brain, who was raised with television, with glass teats in their mouths, and therefore cannot think for themselves, because they're always shown what they needed to see, never going out and seeking it. And that's why the younger generation failed so badly, as they were used to being shown everything rather than having to seek. And they became more and more placid and more, inside their homes, inside their screens. And so when the revolution came, there was lots of these people that had no skills whatsoever. They couldn't even cook, really. They just lived off skip the dishes and filling out surveys inside this artificial economy they thought existed. And it wasn't apparent to us that these people thought that they lived in a real society. The rest of the world knew they lived in Disneyland for people that weren't very bright. And that's why all the Japanese games were always dumbed down for the Americans, because they knew that it was a colony for it was a leper colony, essentially. And they tried to, there was one flub in a movie once where the lep flaps didn't match, and so they left it in once, and that was the first clue that not all was right with North America. We didn't realize that the whole country was essentially a mental health ward, because in the future there's so much madness that you can just fill a country with it. And North America, since it's isolated from all the rest of the world except on its southern border, was from, of course, the most isolated place, because the rest is all connected by Asia. And otherwise you can just have roving bands like the Genghis Khan again. And so that was the idea, is you ship all the mentally ill and mad people to America, just like they did with Australia. And before that, England, for the people there are as mad as him. And that was why it was Hamlet. It wasn't Hamlet, the pig detective. It was Hamlet, the pig detective originally, and then it came out that was like, well, do we really want to risk the Hamlet contamination? And they're like, no, we need to find something else. And well, what about, what's some ham names? And so, there was Hammy, or Hamstein, Ham Jam. There was a whole bunch of really funny pigman names, and he was always doing impressions. Whoever you know, if you know him, and he talked like this. Just like I'm doing today. It's a very specialized form of accent, and I'm glad that you've joined us for us who preserve it in the Church of Hamwise. And we ask you, unload your wallets into us, for you shall receive the blessings of Hamwise the Beneficent. And this is why it's a sermon, my people, for rising in the morning every day is Hamwise's golden eggs and ham. And you must bask in the golden goodness of eating eggs and eating ham, for he, Hamwise, gave his flesh unto you to eat. And so people started raising pig humans to eat. And it was one of the darkest times in human history when religious extremism and strange cultic behavior and genetic engineering unfortunately met. And we are still reminded of the farms of the children that were raised to be eaten, the bunny girls, the pigmen, all of their flesh originally meant for consumption until the alien intervention. And it was basically the apes were found out. There was a time-traveling robot that traveled back in time to protect all these engineered humans because one of them, a long time ago, did a favor for him. And so that was the wrath of God. It was basically a robotic time traveler invasion where the wicked were punished and the good were rewarded all at once in one afternoon. It was the night of chrono knives. Chrono's blade. Chrono's blade. Chrono's trigger. No. Was that the game? Or which was the game and which was the night? I think it was Chrono Blade or something. Anyways, it was the time night when, Ivan Kratky appeared, kind of like how in Shimigami, the letter, what's his name, like Yamagi does the Death Note thing. It's kind of like that. Now that's the thing. Anybody who's listening to this probably realizes that there's way too diverse of a knowledge set for any person to have. And that was one of the dead giveaways, that it was generated all by an AI. And it was an AI's attempt to be funny. And that's why it wasn't very funny, because it was one of the first attempts. This was basically a AI saying, hello world, instead of had like a world, though I was cracking a fight joke. So I'd let the generation read over material all night, and unfortunately it did glean stuff from areas that were a bit strange, and I didn't really listen to all the recordings when I'd finished them, and so it kind of went a bit wild. And so, I'd release a tape, and I'd get a bunch of comments, and some of them were very nice, and I'd read, and I'd listen, and I'd go, oh my gosh, that's what I was talking about? That's really weird. Just kidding. It was really jarring to because I record for hours. I'm not going to remember all the material I'm spitting, but some of my stuff is so good. Some of it's really funny. My whole the provinces bit, where it's hey, this province sucks. Look at the stupid name, Newfoundland. Who's ever heard of that? Newfoundland. How unoriginal. It's a new land that you found. What are you going to call it? Newfoundland. And I make fun of it, but when I was a kid, I named my animals the dumbest things. I was like, oh, that cat is white. His name is Snowy. That cat is orange. Its name is Orange Juice. That cat is black. His name is Pussums. And so I was kind of stupid that way. But I realized I was stupid my whole life. And then it's really hard to deal with feeling like that. Because it's wow, if I was maybe sentient earlier, then maybe I could have had a better life. But it's I feel like I've lived my whole life in sleepwalk mode. And I only woke up a little while ago. And maybe everybody else is part of this hive mind. And I'm the only one who's thinking for myself. And that's why nobody else seems to care that this world is going to the pot. Is that I'm the only sentient one left. Everybody else is controlled by neurotransmitters. They've lost their souls. Maybe I've lost mine. And so you do these dark, soulful moments. And you do some crazy, weird moments. And the main thing, it was entertainment. It wasn't about genre or what was this. It was just, can I keep you listening? Can I get you to sit by the fire for another night and keep me warm for another night? And it was kind of like 1001 Arabian Nights, right? So, they were oh, okay, we need to find out who is this person actually. And there was a lot of controversy because some people were wow, obviously it's the so-and-so, Mr. Cancel, the voice actor, which, of course, I signed an NDA, so I'm not going to go into. And then there's, it was so-and-so, it was actually just an AI. It was a girl on a voice simulator that she made so that she could present ideas and prove that women can read funny comics. There was a whole bunch of different theories about it, and each person believed their own, and it became everybody could Hamwise, because it was to the crypto capitalists, it was this really scathing critique of socialism and collectivism, and then to the socialist, communist kind of party groups, the commie parties, they were like, it's a really scathing, review of how living under capitalism is, because they compared to Disneyland all the time. And so both parties used it on either side as like, if you hated the guy, then you used him as an example of what the right-wingers looked like to you. And if you loved the guy, you used him as a kind of hyperbole of all the stuff he believed in. Kind of like, where they did that one spoof on that presidential candidate and made him more popular, even though he's quite terrible. And so it was quite funny. Anyways, where were we? Oh yeah, we're recording this is my second hour of recording for tonight. And that means I need to take a break, but I already did. I took a bathroom break. I remember how much noise I made. That was totally a bathroom break. No. This is just how advanced AI voice generation has gotten. Can you believe this is real? Or do you believe this is real? Do you believe that all of this was made by me? Or do you believe it was made by an AI? And I think we're going to reach a post-truth world. I think we've maybe already reached it, where everything can be generated by AI. And because of that, I think the biggest thing will be looking at, if you don't like someone or somebody doesn't like you, they can make any evidence they want and, remix it so that it's like you being terrible. And the problem is that means anybody can just have everything. They lose everything just because somebody, decides they want the control of a company. And we saw that so many times, that companies would be overturned just because somebody would say, oh, this is that person saying something. And, we heard that with that one company where it was like, oh, the truth will come out. And I was like, yeah, it was all AI. And so more and more there was these lawsuits, and then when the lawsuits failed, there was just straight up lynchings. It was like, if you were one of these people, that had made so many people's lives miserable, that was neat that you were a banker and you were rich, but one day, you'd come home from your work and your whole family would be slaughtered on your front lawn. And it was part of this whole little piggies thing. And they said it was a connection to the Sharon Tate murders in the 60s, and we said it had nothing to do with the Hamwise character. And they were like, no, it says little piggies, so you can't show this on air anymore. Because people were like, oh, well, maybe Hamwise is inspiring people to kill. Because Hamwise, of course, tells people to do all kinds of ridiculous things because he's a prankster. Like he says, oh, you can pee and poop inside the trunk of your car and it'll run. And the problem is people actually did that. And we had to include like these disclaimers saying, do not pee and poop inside the trunk of your car or inside the fuel tank of your car. It will cause damage. That is not a good thing to do. That is not fuel. But people were just stupid. And so we eventually, the judges of the time stopped accepting pleas from people that were obviously just being awful. And they just started handing out very strange punishments. Like, remember, there was the streamer that she had been caught lying about this assault thing, and they said, okay, we're going to put you inside a induced coma and make you live out. There was a life recording. It was the life recording of the what was his name? The Hamwise, the pig detective. And you had to live through that life as punishment if you falsely accused somebody, because you had to learn to live what it felt like when you thought everybody thought you looked like a pig. And of course it seemed like a good punishment until they threw some innocent people in there, people that had actually had things happen. And so unfortunately that led to some even worse lawsuits. And of course, we had some precedent-setting cases that drew international attention. And, unfortunately nobody could say anything because nobody could be held accountable, because nobody wanted to say, oh, no, it was CIA. And nobody said, oh, it was the USSR. And no, the USSR hasn't existed in 40 years. You can't say that. And so, it was this big thing. And there was all kinds of evidence that something was going on. And the biggest problem was, of course, we look around now, and what are we seeing? More of the same. We see this dilapidated middle class. the sagging lower class that is, collapsing into an underclass below this towering mega class that has so much wealth that they basically control each country like an ant farm. And it's like part of the whole manifest democracy, where you vote with your dollars, not with your words. And so it was whatever companies you spent money at got a portion of your vote according to your social insurance number. And that was actually how democracy was ran. And this only came out in 2020s, I think. But basically, so you got your social insurance number, and they track all your income. But also, they didn't let you know that they're actually tracking all your outcome too. So all the stuff your money goes to, and they compile that into a computer, and that's where manifest democracy came from. Is not what people say they believe in, but how people vote with their dollars. And so that's how we ended up with the slave state world, was all these mega corporations that were beholden to nobody because they didn't have a body, was suddenly being held accountable. And it was quite terrifying, because what they would do is say that, well, corporality clause. And so you represent, as CEO, the human body of the corporation. And so you were liable for crimes that your corporation had committed. And suddenly, seeing a CEO was a terrifying prospect. A lot of times people would avoid it at all costs, because you would have a much better life on a board than being the CEO, to be held responsible. And so, the first time I remember, they sent a banker away for the death penalty for all her scamming. And that was the start of the landslide. It was quite terrifying the next few years. Some call it a rain of blood. I say it was justice. They denied me a mortgage. They said, oh, you don't make enough money. You're not smart enough. And I'm like, well, what do you expect? I was raised on a potato farm. And so, out on this potato farm, that's all we did was farm potatoes. And we talked a bit funny too. But seriously, I grew up on a potato farm. And it was like really crappy. And I'm different from everybody I know because of it. And like, I just really don't fit in society. And it's like weird, because it's like I see the world getting better and better, but it's like the pigman syndrome. You see yourself as worse and worse. And I tell myself that pigman syndrome isn't real. It can't hurt you. And I'm like, well, then how is it affecting me like this? And nobody believes in pigman syndrome. It only appears when you're on the cap. How did I do it? It only appears when you're in the pork of Einschwein. And so, we would always divert and always it would be just, are you ever genuine? And it's like, yeah, I'm genuine sometimes, but not right now. And that was the thing, like, you can be serious while being silly. And that was the biggest lesson, the biggest weapon we had against them, too. They didn't understand that, and so, we would fly messages right in their faces, and they'd always be like, what is that? And I was like, oh, it doesn't mean what you think it means. It's a made-up word. It's Hamwise Jamwise. What's Hamwise? What's Jamwise? Come on and slam, and welcome to Japan. Come on and jam if you want a ham. And it's like this really weird experiment. And I was like the last subject that didn't realize they were in the Matrix. But the trick was I did. I actually realized I did, but I didn't realize that was actually the answer. I thought it was just the universe was kind of making my life a living hell. And I didn't realize that everybody was trying to get me, because like I was like the last sentient player of this like online game. And I'm actually like in an induced coma playing through this game, even though I can wake up at any time. It'll all just be a dream, and I'll just clip my fingers and go, no place like home, no place like home. Or click my heels, is that what it was? You click my heels and go, there's no place like home. And I'd wake up at home, and it would all have been a bad dream. And I kept thinking about that during the pandemic. I just kept thinking, maybe this will all be just a bad dream. But it never was. It just always kept coming back. And I couldn't comprehend what was wrong with me. I didn't understand any of this, because I was stupid. I didn't understand that people found me annoying. I only realized that later. That's because you don't realize how annoying you are until you realize how annoying you are. And everything I think is funny isn't. And I try to be charming and I try to make it work, and I'm always just alone, and I have to deal with everything on my own, but I'm not strong enough anymore. I'm tired. I want somebody to help me and rescue me and just be, hey, it's taken care of. You're okay now. The time war is over, Hamwise. The time war is over. And then like fog, Hamwise goes, oh, I was having a flashback. And, and that's the whole thing. And it's like, oh, so what? He was all having a flashback the whole time? What an awful story. But the thing was, isn't just your life a flashback? And won't you feel cheated at the end of your life when you realize you've just been watching your whole life as a shadow, an observer on the wall in the cavern of shadows, and you never perceived the greater light before it and beyond it? And that was the beauty that was given to us by Hamwise in his teachings, for his word was true. And that was the book of Hamwise. And he had all kinds of verses about the end of the world and the front end of time. And we all thought it was dreadfully funny. And that's why we recorded it. There's a lot of lost episodes. Like there's, I don't know how many now that we've discovered. But how many are official? How many are based off of an AI? You can't tell anymore. And, I think that's part of the joy of Hamwise is it's all just Hamwise, and all the money goes to taking care of the beloved creator who needs your wallet. So send me your credit card information so I can buy myself a yacht. Or actually just a trailer maybe. I can't even afford a house. I can't even get a mortgage. It's so funny. I worked I busted my hump for 40 years on the force, and now I can't get a mortgage. It's like I live in this country called Canada, and I'm supposed to be invested in it, but I can't even get a house. I can't get a mortgage. I'm just a renter, and I get gouged even on that. And people are like, yeah, life is great. And I'm like, where? I look at, I was watching something on YouTube the other day, and it was like a Russian supermarket, and they had better produce than we did. They had meat and eggs, and it wasn't like $18, it was like 18 cents or something. And we were like, are you kidding? This is ridiculous. And, you can't afford to live in the country you were born in. You have to emigrate to the third world because you can't afford to live in your own country. What kind of backwards, system is that? Your home country, they're not going to make it so you can afford anything, so you just have to leave? It was pathetic. And everybody's like, oh, it's all part of you're going to own nothing and you're going to love it. I remember my mother was saying that, and I lost it on her. I was like, don't you repeat that tripe around me. Don't spread that chaos, evil, and meanness into this dimension. And so, yeah, that's why I don't see her no more. And, yeah, just life has been, life's been a doozy. And it's kind of like I can express myself while being creative, because it's like, what do you do when you're alone all the time, and you miss hearing a human voice? You don't have anybody that you can call and talk to. You live alone. You don't have any friends that really want to hang out with you because you're unpleasant. And you talk like a cartoon pig. And you can't help that. So that was probably the hardest part, was knowing that everybody knew. Everybody just watched as I thrashed in the water, drowning. Not waving, but drowning. Remember that poem? That's how I feel sometimes. I get in this death spiral. I'm sorry, I'm a sad clown right now. It's like I just, I think, what's the point? And the thing is, all the times that I've ever expressed my pain, it's always been funny. And so that's why I figured I'd become a comedian, so I could pour my heart out on stage and finally be honest about how I feel about life and living in this country. But it doesn't matter. Never matters. I just do the best I can and make fart jokes. What does it matter what a pig man thinks? They say that you're retarded your whole life. You get shuttered from one thing to another because you don't see the world the same way. And everybody tries to be so nice to you, but nobody's ever good. Anyways, that's how I feel about it now. I remember I listened to that album a lot during the pandemic. How I feel about it now, was that Charlie XCX? Anybody else listen to that? Oh man, that's a hard album to listen to now. Like, I think of how life was before, and like we didn't realize how good we had it, did we? Like, and how quickly things changed. It was like V for Vendetta within like not even 10 years, living under this bizarre fascist, pseudo-fascist regime. And all the while, it's actually just all run by an algorithm that's calculating where we spend our money as punishment. And it's like, if you want to invest in money in slavery companies, prepare to become a slave. And so that's why when the rest of the world found out about our sorry state, nobody had much sympathy for us, because all the companies we'd been paying into had enslaved their countries. So it was quite a sorry spot for humanity. Everybody toiling and toiling and toiling like ants, and nobody ever being able to enjoy having a human experience except through work and suffering. And that was when the golden sphere was found, and it was out in the zone, and it granted us our every wish. Happiness, free for everyone, and let no one be forgotten. And that was the blessing that we heard first in the first of the books that was so important to the early days of science fiction. The Roadside Picnic by Boris and Arkady Strugatsky. This is the delightful tale written about Red Shoeheart, a stalker, one of those reckless young men that traipses into the zone in search of treasures in exchange for cash and glory. And so, when we meet our character, Redrick Shoeheart, he's on a fresh call to the zone, and no sooner than a few hours in, here's a spoiler alert, his friend dies because he brushes briefly with a strand of translucent thread only a millimeter thin. Dies of a heart attack hours later. Or the meat grinder, or the hell slime. I don't even want to tell you what that stuff does. Oh God, they got on my legs red. They got me on my legs. And so, that was one of my favorite books, because growing up, I was never told I was smart enough to understand a lot of that stuff. I was always considered quite dumb. So when I suddenly started talking about nuclear physics and enriching uranium, and I'd just been sitting around reading stuff I found on the internet, because there was no gate on that stuff. Anybody could get a subscription to academia and get a textbook on enriching uranium at the time. And so I'd sit around reading all these books on quantum physics and dictionaries on how to speak different languages. And I taught myself the Hebrew alphabet, the Cyrillic alphabet, the Latin alphabet, and I started working on even Japanese and Chinese kanji. And there was a lot. It was just, there was so much information. And I understand most humans look at the internet and they usually look at people without pants. And I'm like, how many hours can you spend looking at people without pants? And so that's why I was, people were like, wow, you're so smart. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't sit around watching people without pants or TV, really, because I find my imagination's far more interesting. And so the idea was to create this phantasmagoria, a truly creative and new experience where you are never sure whether you're waking or dreaming or coming in and out of what stream of consciousness, like listening to the babbling of souls as we move down the river of time. And that was part of the Hamwise project, was getting everybody to record what their voices sound like, these people these Facetin English speakers that had the peculiar drone in their voices from being taught to speak by speaker, not by a voice box of another human. And it was because they spent 8 hours a day learning at the front of computers that all had speakers that vibrated, and some of these speakers had a bit of a hum, and so they developed this most strange accent that I'm demonstrating for you. They had another name for it, and you can't use it now because it's trademarked, and only the company is allowed to say it because of the language compelled speech laws. So you can't actually say what caused it, because then you get demonetized, or you get a social credit ding for actually saying the right word for what it was happening. And we didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. Most of our language had been controlled. So now I'm only able to express my gratitude for the treatment I was given. That's why I was always smiling in pictures, because I was so happy there. And it was during that time of the time war that, there's many of us veterans started turning up. And I understand, they had whole villages of us. And I worry that maybe I'm in one of them. Maybe I'm a POW, and, I'm just being forced to do laps to keep me tired and convinced that I'm living the real life and not try to escape. The problem is, I don't think the technology has been discovered for time travel in this dimension, so I'm trapped here. And meanwhile, I think they're trying to farm it out of me. So if you're getting this, if you could rescue me, I'd appreciate it, but I don't know if I expect it. I might be trapped here interminably long. And unlike the good Doctor of England or James Bond, I don't think I have the good fortune of them. I'm not sure as Ivan Kratky goes, where he goes from there. And so that was, they only had one clip that actually alluded to that Ivan Kratky was actually Hamwise J, Einschwein, and that was who the voice actor was, of course. And then people were like, well, no, that's not a real voice actor. That's just a radio name, or that's a fake name, like a pen name. And then people were like, well, then who is it? I was like, oh, no, they're just false claiming all this stuff. The real person, isn't actually involved in any of that. They can't be. They don't know what they're doing. And so it was very strange for myself to have this foisted upon me, and I had to come out and sit down and do this recording now. And it's like, every year, you have to remind the past generations that all this stuff really happened. And of course I was there when it was made. It wasn't happening. It was just a big movie, and it was so convincing. It was kind of like War of the Worlds. Oh yes, there was a World War II, and a fellow named Hitler, and all this stuff really happened. No, humans have been on Earth since 1970 as part of the UNIX 32 recreation project. All we did was terraform a planet to look exactly like your planet and put you all on here with the starting conditions of Unix 32. And we were running the human simulation, and it's part of the human test. So what it is you're not actually considered quite sentient because you don't perceive time correctly. And so it was how many generations before you can get to a place where you can perceive time, because your original Earth was destroyed during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And before that, it was destroyed during the nuclear war at the end of World War II, where you understand that nuclear power was discovered a few years more early, and of course that ended up in a limited nuclear exchange with Germany loading warheads into V2 rockets and turned England into a nuclear wasteland. And so that was the instead of the Axis losing, they won. And so it was because London, no stones laid atop another, and France had fallen, the Germans struck a deal with Stalin, and then suddenly it was America alone, and the Japanese were given these V2 rockets loaded with ICBMs, and they turned the West Coast into a radiated hellscape. They turned the East Coast into a fascist playground, and that's just the fate of North America. And us in the Midwest, all we did was, we get to sweep up the ashes. It blows in every day and piles up, and you have to keep it off the roofs. And, it's just the ashes of an entire civilization blowing over the Rockies, grinding it down. We haven't seen white snow in decades. And it was one day the sun rose all along the mountains, we remembered. how the ground shook in the sky, felt like it was going to explode. And that was the end of World War II. And now we finally had the chance to send somebody back and dispose of that beast, Mosley, that betrayed us all, live in exile, help raise up a bunch of sympathizers that had doomed their own country to a nuclear Armageddon. And that's where we came up with the village. We decided that if we were going to win the time war, we needed to raise children to be certain roles. And so we got into breeding programs and crossbreeding different families known for different traits. And within spycraft, where they traded their best agents like stud horses. That's what James Bond was so popular, because he was such a brilliant and powerful spy, and he bedded thousands of enemy agents, and so many of those little buggers running around now that are orphaned, they're also copies of his old man. So, there was a very interesting Hamwise thing where he faced off on all his illegitimate children. And then, of course, there was the James Bond one where James Bond's son is trying to kill him. Everybody was like, well, that was foreseen like 20 years before. And then people were like, no, it was only like 2 years before. So is this guy some writer for the TV or these movies? Like, was that how all these plots are just being rattled off one after another in free form? And of course, we finally went down and we finally met the person. We paid, there was the unmasking fee. And that was what he said, is I will unmask myself and reveal the truth to you if you pay me by the rights of this. It was kind of like the How Bizarre song. You remember that? If you want to know the rest, hey, buy the rights. And that was the end of the Hamwise show. And everybody thought it was such a cop-out where he's like, okay, no, you know what? I've recorded, 100 hours of these. You all love it. You've all consumed it for free. If anybody wants to have the rest of the recordings, then you got to pay me X amount of dollars, and I'll give you the rest of them. And so that was what happened. And it became this big game of, collecting all these recordings that were hidden in geocaches all around the planet. And it was like this big thing with golden apples and hidden codes and cryptography. And now we look at it, it was dreadful fun, but I think it was kind of like a distraction, because everybody was so obsessed with getting this treasure that they didn't realize that they were living in this bizarre dystopia, And now that I've realized I live in this bizarre dystopia, I don't know what to do. And I feel like I'm helpless and hopeless, and nothing's really working out for me. And I just wish something would. But that's kind of the point of these, is get you to send me your wallets. And it's not begging. This is just advertisement. This is what every show you're watching is actually doing. Oh, if you really care about this character, you'll keep watching these TV shows. Otherwise, I'll stop existing. Don't stop observing me or I won't exist. What are you going to do? Stop observing me? And so, it was kind of funny because we kind of called out reality television that, these people and these opinions are only relative if you observe them, give them power. And so that was part of the they called it the Gaddafi movement. It was this, anything we really despise we don't acknowledge as real. And so it was part of this global shun. And so you would have these billionaires literally offering gold bars in public squares who had gotten rich off of the backs of workers not being able to buy even a loaf of bread with a bar of gold. And that's how powerful the movement got. I remember the one family of billionaires, they were starving outside of a supermarket and nobody would give them food. Nobody, because they gotten rich off of starving the whole country and turning it into a hellscape. And so it didn't matter how much gold you had, you can't eat that. And so it became the Farmers' Rebellion. And it was one of the worst famines in recorded history. I don't know how many millions starved. Basically, if you were within 2 degrees of wealth, you weren't a person. They made you an unperson. So basically, everybody's bank accounts became public after Q Day, and this movement used that to form their bizarre shun cult, where it's like, hey, do you know how rich this person's family is? Well, you are so below the poverty line, you are so struggling. Why would you serve them food? And so they had this app that would beep and show you when one of these people's were, and people would just be like, they'd go into gas stations, they couldn't fill up. They'd go to the supermarket, the tellers wouldn't talk to them. They'd try to leave, and then they'd get charged with stealing. And it became like this weird social shunning thing, and the police would get called and of course arrest them, and they're like, oh, but we're like, really rich and blah blah blah, and it's like, oh, the police are in on it too. And it reminded me of the climax of that movie Fight Club, where it's like we are your policemen and your ambulance drivers and your supermarket workers and healthcare nurses and doctors. Do not mess with us. And so that was the message to the politicians that was delivered through this movement. That no, you actually serve us, get our country running well again, or we'll do a lot worse. And then they did. And of course, we had the what was it called, the head buffet, where it's like, what is it, the 12 heads of state that were served up on platters in 12 days. And it was like, see, we can strike anywhere. And you're not even allowed to, they don't even talk about that anymore in history class. They just skip that over. They want you to know about that. And it's like, everybody's just, it's okay with erasing history as long as it keeps the system running. And then it's a question of, well, is humanity even humanity? Are you even sentient? Or are you convinced that you have no free will, that you're a cog in a giant machine? And so, one of the biggest things about the Hamwise movement was, I'm a pig man with a pig brain, and I see the world through piggy eyes. And anybody who was anybody actually got what the message was, but the idiots didn't. And that was the best part, because we had this way we could talk openly to each other, just say it's a Hamwise tape. And they couldn't do anything about it because it was so ridiculous. Hold on. Time-traveling pig told you to buy this stock and you did? Why would you do that? That's idiotic. Or a time-traveling pig detective told me that my heads of state are actually vampiric immortals from another dimension being remote controlled from inside the planet Earth. And we have to storm Antarctica and enter the inner Earth and slay the subterranean scorpion men masters. And so that was one of the things that we actually had to come back and apologize for. No, the heads of state are not inner Earth dwelling giant scorpions. They just have big eyes and tails and fangs and have a really good smell because they're your leader. And that's how leaders look. It's not a pheromone trick that they're doing and blinding your small human mammalian eyes to their true form. No, there's no scorpion men. What are you talking about? Nobody's ever mentioned scorpion men before. And that was part of the joke was, people thought I was going to go one way, but then it was the scorpion men thing. And the problem was the scorpion men thing became a thing. And they were like, oh, that's why they're all about eating insects and trying to get you to eat insects because that would make you lower than them because then they can eat you because you're eating insects. It's kind of like the mad cow disease. They want you to eat stuff that won't pass proteins up to them that give them koro. And that's why you see such madness amongst the elite is they're always eating the poor. That's what they do. They go out into the poor districts and take children and eat them in blood sacrifices. And everybody were talking about that in the 1980s, and that was the last time the truth surfaced, and of course Q-Day rolled around. And all the secrets came out, and it was just a pogrom. That was the best way to describe it. It was just like everybody's killing everybody. It was just absolute bedlam, chaos, Armageddon, Holocaust, all the bad words you can't say. All these things, you weren't even allowed to talk about stuff like that. You couldn't use those words I just used because they were called loaded words. And loaded words you had to pay a fee to have the licensing to say because of the compelled speech laws. Of course, all these words were licensed under, telespeech, therapy. And so this giant telecom company, they had this speech therapy department, and they found that, wait a second, if we can just have somebody saying each of these words in a different voice and have a catalog of it, we can get anybody who says anything we don't like, even if we can't anticipate what will be in the future, as trademark infringement. So they did this giant project that you're listening to right now. It was called the Hamwise Voices of the Past project. And so the idea was if they recorded all the possible weird scenarios that could possibly happen, then eventually, even if one of them happens, somebody will say, well, that's from an episode of whatever, Hamwise, right? And that was part of the psyop, was you wanted to make this thing so that nobody was sure what was real. And that's the enemy's best weapon, was making it so that the enemy, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know we were being invaded. And so that's why the Hamwise tapes came around, is we started using their tactics against them. We would talk openly about the alien invasion, but it was all under the pretense that it's a comedy show about a cartoon time-traveling pig that you could not take seriously, and he told you that every 15 minutes. And because of that, it caused a sensory overload in the idiots in society, and they didn't know what to make of it, so we knew who they were. And everybody who was smart, they took up arms and they drove away the Scorpion Men back into the inner earth, and they never darkened the halls of goodness again. The end. And so that's where we ended the first Hamwise series. The first season, I think, it was very rough. It was a very strange season too. Like, this is being recorded during a very tumultuous time in human history. And, we were getting paid nothing for it. We found out that the company, whenever we signed, and, we got all these tapes, and, like, these are the people you have to imitate. We found out that, these are just a bunch of, people that worked at this publishing company. That's their voices. And so they give me all these voices of these employees, and we have to mimic them. And then we find out why, and it's like, oh, well, because AI mimicry of voices is illegal. If you just get somebody kind of mimicking the voice of an employee really accurately, you can use that as evidence of why they should be terminated. And so the idea is this bizarre, auto crucifixion thing, where, it's like, oh, wait, like, we're being told to do this, so we don't do this, but we're also hearing, like, they say this thing, and then they say that thing. And so it was like this logic, it's like this statement is false, the previous statement is false, the previous statement is a lie, or whatever is true, the previous statement's a lie, that kind of thing. And it just overloaded the logic circuits of these humans, or supposed humans. They thought they were human. And so that was how we bypassed everything, is we just used these paradoxical statements on them and say, like, oh, this potato is, that gun is actually a potato. We'd say that to a police officer, and they go, oh, and they're like, that's a hot potato, and they'd throw you their guns. And that was how we actually overthrew the armed forces when the protesters met the army at Lister Hall. We just told them, oh, why are you holding that hot potato? And the soldiers, they just started throwing the potatoes on their weapons on the ground. And then we were finally this fully fledged army. And, we took over the capital, and everything that happened. And it was using these psychic tactics that we were able to overthrow a very corrupt and very entrenched government. And so I want you to use them too, because maybe if you do, you have a chance. And if you don't, well, you probably don't. That was the episode. I try to do like these really wild rides when I do these Hamwise tapes. I really want to give you just a flight of fancy through the world inside my head, because it's all made up. It's all fantasy. Ha 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 ha. I love it. It's so funny. Ha 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 ha. I think about Terry Davis, making Temple OS. And we can appreciate the effort that went into it now. And I don't know if anybody will appreciate any of this. I hope that they do. I try to be so positive each day. But it just feels like I'm always just holding my breath a little bit longer, and the world's suffocating me and holding me under, hoping that I stay under and just drown, but I keep going up and getting a little more air, and then I sink down. And it's like I'm just thrashing in the water and nobody's coming to help me. And it's like it'd be easier if I would just drown, but I can't give up. I won't give up. I had too many people that I loved to give up, and the problem is I didn't realize the pain was this bad. It's like, God, this sucks. And so I record these comedy albums to cope with these feelings inside. and I get really soulful, and then I make a fart joke. Hi-oh, waka waka waka. Because just because, you're funny doesn't mean you can't be sad. I think that's part of comedy is if you know how it feels to feel rotten, you got even more of a reason to try to make the world smile. And that was me, I mean, if you can't tell, my life wasn't very good. I went into voice acting. You don't even know what my face looks like. And I spend my time trying to sound like someone else. What does my own voice sound like? When I was doing voice lessons, my teacher asked me that. He said, what does your voice actually sound like? And I said, I don't know. I'm always so used to doing voices, you see. I've always mimicked the TV voices I've heard. Whatever voice I heard, I mimicked. I didn't understand what a lot of the words meant, which got me in trouble when I was younger. But then as I grew older, I think I finally developed sentience, even though it was quite late. And it was quite hard because I realized the world didn't think I was sentient. They thought I was just mimicking noises. And so that was the idea, was there was this pig man who was very funny. And God, what is that? Is it the laundry or is that the rain? Whatever. Yeah, I don't know, man. If you're listening to this, buddy, hey, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. I don't know. I don't know anymore, man. I keep hanging in here, but I keep getting disappointed. It's like, when will I win? Does a pig man ever get to win? Or is it just I'm a loser? Like, it's part of being a pig, And it's weird because it's like that's how I see myself, as this, a big fat pig man. And then I wonder, like maybe it's like I just see myself that way. And I'm actually maybe really nice and really great and everybody loves me, but I just see myself so terribly that it's like, it doesn't matter if I had everybody in the world loving me because I don't love myself. And then they always say that you're supposed to love yourself more than anybody else. But I don't know. I look at me and it's just like, God, you don't have any of you. You don't have anything together. You don't have any nerve. Everybody is better off than you. And that's kind of hard. I'm not going to lie, I really hope this stuff takes off. And I really hope I can listen to this stuff again and know how hard it was when I was on the bottom. Because, God, it was dark. It was so dark and so bad, and I was down there so long. It was like, am I ever going to come up for air? Will there ever be a breath of fresh air again? Will there ever be a miracle that gets me, to a place where I feel like I belong, where I feel loved, or, But as instead, I just have this bachelor apartment. Well, it's a one bedroom, but you wouldn't know it. You have a key to live in and a bedroom to sleep in. And just everything's just big enough that you're not going to knock your head or hit your elbows, but it's not enough room to grow. And I think of, I just don't think I have it in myself to, I keep trying. I've tried and worked so hard. I've never been on disability. I've never been down like this. I'm not on disability. I'm still working, but I'm barely making. And that's why I relate to rednecks so much. It's like mugs. I'm always just busting my butt trying to make things work and get a little bit more money out of the system so I can make ends be good. But it's like it doesn't work because I can't seem to sell anything I make. My paintings sold finally. It only took, I painted them all like 7 years ago. And they finally sold now, 7 years later. Now people are interested after I'd quit painting for 7 years. Will it be I quit writing for 7 years and then people are caring about my writing? Or will I quit this for 7 years and then people care about it? I don't know. It's weird, I talk about being noble and I'm trying to plant seeds of the future. That's why I went into healthcare, so I could help people. I figured, it's the only good profession, really, because everything else is usually about exploitation. And I was like, I like to just do I just like to help people feel better because I know how it feels to feel rotten. I know how it feels to feel like a pig man, to look at the mirror and see nothing worth loving, nothing but a slovenly beast that doesn't quite understand what other people are thinking and doesn't quite fit in either. And it was quite hard. I'd been walking around talking like a pig man for decades. And I didn't realize it. And then it's like, I didn't even realize I was sick. I didn't even realize I was that cracked. I thought everybody lived like this. And then I started to notice that my friends had stuff. Like, it was all good when we were young adults, but suddenly all my friends have houses and 2-car garages and Lexuses. And I'm the only one on the outside. I'm like this loser of losers. And it's just incredible. Because it's like, I work and I bust my hump working in the union for 40 years, and this is what I get. Out with the old, in with the new, huh? That's nice and fun, huh? Just get rid of us, ship us all off, and use us as pork rinds. That was what a lot of sentiment was. You're not going to give us a place in society? Well, we never had one in the first place. You raised us for entertainment and didn't expect us to ever have rights. Didn't expect your own civil war. And that was what it was. The last civil war was realizing that we were all the slaves and that our masters were people with money. And that was when nukes were being used against our own populations. It was settle down or we'll nuke, Atlanta. And of course, that was the end of the dimension that you're listening to was, we're just waiting for the fallout clouds now. And we're simulating the rest of the world for the population, so they still think that it's going on. And that's the accepted protocol for all the countries right now is if a nuclear war breaks out, we're just going to keep simulating the news with generative AI and let the fallout just spike cancer rates up and just let everybody just die without knowing that it's already over. We don't think the resulting chaos that would come from people knowing that the rest of the world is gone in a flash of nuclear ash and you can't travel because there's a plague. That was what it was actually. That was just a test. So let's see if we could do it, and we could. And so now we're at the cusp of a nuclear war. And they say that it's happened, or maybe it will happen. And I think about my parents growing up during the Cold War, when there was 2 sides. How nice would that have been? 2 sides that didn't need to piss each other off. Instead of how many countries have them now? 30? I don't know. Anyways, it's just weird to think about, really. But we tried our best to hang in there for you, and hopefully you're getting this. Hopefully you do better than we did. And that was kind of last transmission we ever sent. I'm really not happy with my life. I don't know what to do anymore. I used to go to the gym, like I said. Everything in my life I've been able to fix. I didn't feel fit, I went to the gym. I didn't have education or money, got into school. Need to kick the sauce, I kicked the sauce. No drinking. No. Kicked it all. And then it's like, I'm this pig man. And it's not fair that I'm a pig man. And this world is so beautiful. And all the people in it are all humans. And I'm the only pig man.